everybody. Welcome into your Tuesday. Submit to the High Council here on World Class Bullshitters. I'm your host, Jeff Hicks, and with me tonight is my co-host all the way from the Riververse. Say hello to Andy Andrew.
What's going on, Jeff? What's going on, chat? I almost have my voice entirely back. I kind of have levels to it now. I'm not monotone completely throughout the entirety of the day. So it is good to be here with y'all. And we're going to have a great show for you, as usual.
Folks, thank you for joining us. Tonight, I am coming at you in higher resolution, higher definition. I have now had a fiber connection installed, and we have a hardwired connection into this computer right here. So WCBS should be coming in nice and crystal clear. I even shaved for the occasion. So, folks, welcome into a new more HD version of the show. It's only 2024, and HD's been the standard for 16 years.
I was working at Game Crazy fresh out of high school in 2007 when Sony and Microsoft were battling back and forth on what was going to gain supremacy, HD, DVD, or Blu-ray.
Dude, I loved that format war because it was so oh man, HD DVD with their red case, and they got all this great tie-in with Xbox. This is going to be amazing. And then you're like, Blu-ray is better. And it was real short too. It was swift.
That battle did not last very long. One couldn't even really call it a war. It was kind of a single battle, maybe a skirmish.
Yeah, it was. I never owned a single HD DVD when it was the new format. I've never owned the player. Now I picked up a couple discs years later because they were $1, and I'm like, you never know when you're going to have access to a player. I might want to check it out in the future. But,
sure.
I mean, we're beyond that. I can't believe we never had a format war for this generation. There's just 4K Blu-rays.
Yeah, we kind of just stuck with the Blu-ray format, right? Sony's got the market kind of cornered on that physical distribution format. And I guess aside from I'm not a fan of there being kind of a monopoly of sorts there, I like the 4K format. It fits a lot on a single disc, though that doesn't stop them from doing multiple discs anyway. And I love how clean 4K looks on a good TV. It looks so good,
especially animation.
Oh yeah.
Folks, we're going to be talking about some animation, some modern world stuff, many things tonight. So hit that thumbs up button. Before we get started, though, hail to everybody in the chat. We got Dr. Coffin-Nails, who's reminding everybody to hit that thumbs up button. We have Legatus Legionist, welcome in. Shrebbles08 brings us to the word of the day, which we'll read to you in just a moment. Hello to Digsby. Hail to Jason Evangelista. We also have our friend. Oh, wait, that's me. I'm Good Morning Pop Culture. And Clone Geek, what is up to you, my friend? We will read emails at the end. Now, folks, we have our word of the day, which is sponsored to you by Shrebbles08. The word of the day is soup. Dead soup and Wolver soup. Hairy soup, a fistful of soup, Robo soup, and Saving Private soup.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Soup. What type of soup would that be?
Lava.
Be lava.
Okay. Well, I mean, technically, we already know what it is. It's the boiling eyeball soup, remember?
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, soup.
I unintentionally did that. That's going to be my headcanon.
I prefer
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I love Temple of Doom. I will save that for another day. How about Bridge Soup on the River Kwai? There we go.
Oh.
Starring Alec Guinness.
Schindler's Soup.
I bet it was split pea. The Soup Club.
Okay. Instead of Breakfast Club, I'm here for it. Lord of the Soup. That's kind of easy. Soup Busters.
Soup Force 1.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm here for that. Trying to think what else. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Soup.
Dead Soup Society in the chat's a great one.
Hey, that's good. Dead Poet Society is such a good movie.
Oh, Captain, my Captain.
I love that movie.
Oh, let's see. Not Without My Soup. Well, of course, I love South Park as well.
Honey, I Shrunk the Soup.
What's Eating Gilbert Soup?
Little Shop of Soup.
That actually sounds tasty.
That honestly sounds like an actual restaurant or like a small mom and pop like corner cafe that they specialize just in soups.
How about the new weather changing epic, the soup after tomorrow? That'd be horrible.
Hot tub soup machine.
Ooh, that just sounds fun. Boiling away in a pot of French onion. Fantastic.
French onion's not bad. That's pretty not bad.
I do love French onion soup. Let's see. We have Dancing with Soup, Soup to a Kill, Have Soup Will Travel. Don't be a menace to South Central while drinking your soup in the hood. Oh, okay. I love it. Folks, keep sending in your soup titles tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun with you talking about soup and other, well, I don't know, soup-related paraphernalia. Soup and soup accessories, like ladles and bowls and spoons.
Soup and soup accessories. I love it.
Whoa. Well, I tell you what, we all love a good soup. It's all right. Well, it's a little hot for soup where I am. What's the weather here? It is currently still 83 degrees at 9:14 at night. So it's a little hot for soup. It's going to be hot for soup tomorrow. It's going to be hot for soup for many, many days. Andrew, I'm sure it's the same for you.
It was 102 today. It was warm.
Yeah.
Thank God I work indoors and I have air conditioning.
Yeah, same here. It was not fun. Forest soups. Soup it is as soup it does.
That's pretty not bad.
I
respect it. I respect
Digsby,
it.
that might be the comment of the night so far. So, folks, you got to outdo Digsby. That's going to be hard to do, though, because,
he set the bar.
Soup it is as soup it does. Yeah, the bar's pretty high. Oh, I'm seeing some Bond titles, too. The soup is not enough. Soup breaker.
Liverlet soup. The soup is never enough.
Hot per soup is pretty clever, too. I think what I'm looking for is the best soup-related puns. There you go, folks. You could have some fun with us there. How about Superman? There you go. That's the easiest one.
How did it take us that long to get to that one?
I don't know. But the man with the golden soup, I don't know if that's Soup Digsby, and I don't want to find out. This is not that kind of a channel.
Yeah, that's another show.
Not on this channel, it's not.
That's another show on an entirely different channel that has no connection with World Class Ball
to a whole new level.
Oh no!
I don't want to. Was it Jessica Tandy or some other old actress? Ooh, no thanks. So, folks, let's clean up our act a little, shall we? We have all kinds of things to talk about. Do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button to let YouTube know that you enjoy this content. We need to get these numbers up, folks. They're rookie numbers, so help spread the word. If you just copy and paste the URL, that counts as a share, and you don't have to share it anywhere else. So, if you're all watching on YouTube right now, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button and share. So, Andrew, it has been a whole week since we've last talked. A lot has changed for you. A lot has changed for me. You sound a lot better, so I'm excited to have some fun. Now, I have it on good authority, friends, that Script Doctor is on his way. And when he's here, we'll start talking about Batman Caped Crusaders, a little bit about House of the Dragon 2, the Season 2 finale has just happened. And, well, people are up in arms about it. They're talking about how, well, it built to something, but it was a little underwhelming. Plus, too many characters may have bit the bullet. Was it 3 big ones? So I'll ask you this. Since you're more into the realm of fantasy, have you been watching this show?
No. I saw the entire first season, and it was pretty solid show. Like just on its face, the scripting, the pacing, costuming was fantastic. Really good job with the CGI comparative to Game of Thrones, which I have not actually seen all of. I've only seen the first 2 seasons and then the final season. And I know that a lot of people really, really, really were hot on House of the Dragon. While what I just said holds true in terms of its just general quality as a piece of media, as a piece of entertainment, I just can't get with George R.R. Martin's type of storytelling. I come from guys like C.S. Lewis with Chronicles of Narnia, guys like Tolkien with, his Lord of the Rings and the whole just Middle-earth legendarium. George R. R. Martin's just a little too dark. Everybody's a horrible human being. Like it's people will have moments where it's like, oh, that was a really badass moment, or that was a cool thing that character did, or they said something really insightful or really cool. It's not like he's a bad writer. He's a very good writer. But I'm not a huge fan of just how dark and gratuitous his stuff gets for not often like narrative reasons. A lot of times it doesn't feel like it's something that suits the story. It's just like, okay, so we're having either a gore fest here or something incredibly gratuitous, sexual in nature. For no reason. We're just, this is just on the screen or it's just on the page because reasons. And I don't know, like that actually takes me out of the story because I'm there for the story. I love the fantasy setting, but like it, if I'm getting taken out of the story because you're going with like a 16 out of 10 for, your sexual content and your violence, I'm not interested ultimately. It's not for me.
I think that is why it's so popular, because everybody loves a train wreck. And take it back to the 90s with the crash television, where you're watching Jerry Springer and you're watching the most lascivious, trashiest, most obscene situations possible. And now we want that in all forms of entertainment. And now it's
Right.
in fantasy, it's in Lord of the or Game of Thrones. That's what that thing is. It's just bad, like you said, it's bad people, bad situations, and people eat it up. Everybody loves a good train wreck. Every big train wreck is what captures the attentions of this country. I mean, take it back to the fucking Honey Boo Boo. Everyone was obsessed with that stupid show because those people were
I forgot that
wreck.
thing existed at one point for
I
15
thought
minutes.
we were through it, and then somebody called Mama June got another TV show, and she's still somehow making money. Good for you, lady. No disrespect to your hustle. I don't see the appeal. I don't see the appeal of a lot of this stuff. People just love dumpster fires. Now, I can see the appeal of Game of Thrones. Don't get me wrong. I've watched enough of it at this point to go, oh, I get why this is liked. I get that people like a good, well, I don't know how to describe it. It's bad people having bad things happen to them from slightly better people or slightly worse people. So that's it. But people love tits. People love the violence. People love the gore. It's the perfect blend of everything. And now it's got brand recognition on top of that. That's really what you got to do to get the water cooler back, is you got to get those things that are so impactful. It's not like with this Batman show we'll talk about. It looks great, but it's not really worth talking about to a lot of people. You come off as a nerd. But what really hooks everyone is the base needs of sex and violence and a little bit of gore. A lot of gore, actually. That's what we need. More gore. The wholesome character has become taboo. Absolutely. There is this trope in movies that I hate. It's when you get a female character and her character trait is to be unlikable because that's supposed to show strength. And there's so many of these characters that are unlikable, and that's it. It's just like, oh, if you dislike them, you're a sexist, but you don't really like them because they're kind of a D-bag. And I hate that trope. That's something I wish we could get rid of across all entertainment.
It's stupid. You don't have to do that. Like, and here's the thing. It's funny that you mentioned that because you don't necessarily have to have a character be, a female character be just like an ultimate 10 out of 10 sweetheart in terms of like how nice she is in order for her to be a likable character. You can have a character that's a bit of a bitch and still be likable if she's written well to the point where, like, in the midst of her kind of being that way, you're giving the audience reason to want to kind of see it from her side, or maybe give the audience an understanding of the reason why she kind of is the way she is, right? Like, you got to endear that character somehow. You want to give your audience a reason to latch on to that character, whether it's the delivery of the lines. Like, maybe she's saying or doing something that's like total bitch mode, but the way that she's doing it, the delivery is just hysterical, and so you can't help but kind of be behind it, right? Like, there are characters in wrestling that have been like that. We're like, that character's a bit of an asshole, or that heel, whether it's a male or a female, and you're like, but I can't help but like him, right? Because the delivery, the way that they're doing it, going about it is just fantastic, right? So it's all in the quality of the writing. It's all in the delivery. And I think to circle back around, the reason why we end up with these characters who are both complete jerk offs, whether male or female, um, yeah, uh, and not likable, is because the people who are writing them don't know how to be likable themselves. And you can really, it's hard to write what you don't know. You can do it. It's really difficult. It still requires you learning that which you didn't know. You gotta do a little bit of research there to make it work. But like, if you don't, like, if I'm gonna say I'm gonna write a spy thriller, right? And let's just pretend like I didn't grow up watching Bond movies and Mission Impossible and all of those, right? Let's pretend like that's not a thing, and that Mission Impossible isn't my favorite all-time film franchise. Let's say I know nothing about the genre, but I'm gonna write a book that's in that genre. You think that's gonna be any good?
You got to do research. You can't just make it up as you go.
Yo, removing that too. No, I'm not doing the research, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Is that going to be a good spy thriller book?
It's probably going to be the worst spy thriller book ever, which will get me to read it right away. I'm just saying, man. Like, any uninformed creative, I'm gonna try the workout, because it's probably gonna be like my immortal levels of terrible. And
Right.
I will respect anybody that goes for it that hard, because it's like, it's not easy to put it out there in the world. For some people, that's like the hardest, scariest part. For other people, they don't think about it. I don't have anything but respect for the people that just go through with it. Like, if they're like, fuck it, man, I'm going to do it. I'm going to live in a round house. Sorry, that's a Beverly Hills Cop reference. You have my respect. Go for it, people. Go live the dream. But you got to be able to create outside of your wheelhouse, and you got to do the behind the scenes work. That's the most exciting part for me. Like, cheap plug, folks, follow me on Instagram, the Jeff Hicks. I post my updated sketches and the stuff I'm working on. Like,
I've been seeing your Wolverine sketch.
Oh, yeah, thank you. That was fun. Now, you probably saw the inked one. The one I did with the pencil yesterday, in my opinion, was much better in every way. And I was like, because I told you off air, it is very important to continue to grow with each book. And as you understand, like Wokebusters, I had to keep it looking a certain way to be consistent across this book. In reality, I'm just like, oh man, I can do so much better. Like, not even better. It's a different style. It's like, a more animated style to comment on society. But now I'm sitting at night, I'm sitting here drawing, like, all right, we can render this, we can go up here, we can put that, it makes it look like it's popping off the page. I'm like, I literally studied Jim Lee last night for 2 hours, man. It was the most fun thing ever. I'm nerding out. Like, I drew this Wolverine, and I was looking at something that had none of like the detail or rendering. I just was kind of looking at the pose, and I'm like, all right, let's see if I can memorize how this goes. And I do now, and I'm like, yes, all right, watching these fucking David Finch videos works. And then I pulled out my Jim Lee book, and I'm like, all right. And I'm sitting here looking how they do the cross hatching, trying to like figure out how to do these things, and pulling out my iPad. I was like, I got to draw this picture of who was it? Who's the guy that looks like a Spartan? He's got a Gladiator. That's his name. I was like, I got to draw this picture of Gladiator because it's got, super muscles and all this crap. But long story, folks, short, if you want to watch the journey of the stuff I'm working on, the evolution, to see what I can do, well, follow me on Instagram, the Jeff Hicks. I post a lot more than I used to. So you'll see new stuff, a wall of Wokebusters, and then some old sketches, but keep checking it out. I got new stories and new things to bring you all the time, and you guys really enjoy it.
I support this.
Dude, thank you for supporting me. You were the first person to back. You backed at a very high tier too, so thank you very much.
I think on day one that was the highest available tier, unless there was one where it was buying like multiple copies or something like that. I can't remember. I just remember being like, this is the one that gets me everything. Bye.
There was a one that just had like stealing solo and stuff. We already have that stuff, so it doesn't really. It was just for people that are like, oh, this looks cool. I want to check out all of your stuff. And that actually worked. People do that. So I'm figuring 100%. Out how to mail all of those books in the most efficient way. It's like, that's a stack and a half of books. We got to board and bag them and, take good care of them.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to getting mine.
I'm looking forward to, I'm done. So I'm just looking forward to getting it in my hands. Like, that's the exciting part. It's like, oh
Yeah.
man, seeing the words on the page, seeing people's reactions to it. It's a lot different than what it started out as, and it's a lot tighter and a lot funnier. I was like,
Mhm.
man, I don't know what's up. Now I know what's up. Folks, welcome in from the Great White North. It is the Script Doctor.
Hello. Sorry for my lateness. I had some other obligations that ended up going a little longer than expected, but so happy to be here with you two gentlemen and with all you lovely people in the chat because I'm reading the title of this stream and it's like, yeah, this is going to be some good conversation.
We've got we got a whole slew of stuff.
Now, real quick, Zero Dozer had made this point about V was making comments about how House of the Dragon is a demonstration of how modern TV is okay with the female gaze and gay sex, but Pretty Women have become out of the question. And Aurora Uplinks, who had been a member for 10 months, thank you, Aurora Uplinks, women don't like competing with other women. That is the source of no Pretty Women on TV. Some women in control have eliminated their rivals, I think. Let's talk about this for a minute, because we like to have conversations about the broader topics in entertainment. You sit around and wonder, why do all the women look like this? Or why do all the dudes act like that? And then one day you look around and you're like, I don't recognize anything. And so it's always interesting to work backwards, or at least talk about how we get to these places. And I've noticed this for quite some time. I'll like to take it back 12 years. Yeah, I know, 12 years to my college days. And I had this class, and they're talking about the male gaze, the female gaze, and it really brought my focus onto these things. And I hated it. I did not ever in my life go, I understand the value of this research, or I understand the value of this perspective. I thought, what a waste of time.
That is the correct response.
I was the guy who would go to class and I would challenge the ideas. I would also sometimes roll my eyes at what we were being taught. I thought, well, I just need to get through this class to graduate. So let's just know the stuff for the test and move on. And so I've been very focused on, I guess, what we'd call culture war stuff since college, before there was ever a channel, because I've always found it annoying and pointless. And one of the things I always harped on, but hyper focused on was like, man, they really don't make women in art attractive. I understand maybe, if you're doing something for a kid's show, you want like cleavage, like they did back in the 90s. It's totally like, oh man, Lady Deathstrike, we're just gonna put a t-shirt on. Hey, I get it, it's a kid's show. We gotta keep a balance. I'm not one of those weird people at Disney. But also, too, I like to look at the age of the consumers and their interest. It's like comic books. Comic books sell on muscled men, ugly monsters, sexy women, and atmosphere. Like, you can break down all the great comic book artists into those things. Like, Jack Kirby had, the ugly monsters and the atmosphere and the epic heroes. And Romita had all of that stuff when he had to flex that muscle, and so like that. But we took the art form that is known for its beauty or its storytelling devices that evoke more emotions than your average form of entertainment, and we neutered them intentionally so they wouldn't be offensive to some potential ghost audience, aka the 5 women that work in comic books. And so we've edited the art, we've shrunken everything, narrowed it down, made it less palatable. And then you got people that are wondering what's going on. It's in movies. They do that too. That's why people will go and extra attack Sydney Sweeney because, they like her because she's got a big rack.
And a fit body. Like, she's actually got meat on her bones and it's in all the right proportions, as opposed to that very heavy lady that was in This Is Us, who I find her story hard to believe, where she's like, she had 10 cents in her bank account before she got this job. It's like, if she was really struggling for cash, why was she so big? She should have at least lost weight just in compelled dieting. But no, it comes down to the fact that casting directors, for some strange reason, stopped going after talent that had curves and started going after women that had more of a masculine, slim, wiry frame. There's also a lot more actors that started making themselves look that way for some strange reason. And I don't know why.
Like,
and then there's also and then there's also the gap in the fact that a lot of the beautiful people on the women's side of things found it a lot easier to make money on Facebook and Instagram and then other social media platforms than to go to Hollywood and actually work at a craft and do something. Because right now, I mean, the other part too is I can't remember what year it was, but I think it was 2014 when cam modeling took off. And all those cam models, they would have gone to Hollywood to be actors if they didn't have cam modeling as a fallback. In fact, one of my friends was working on a show, I think it's called Bookies, and they literally did cast a couple of people that are cam models this time because they needed really good looking women and they couldn't find them in the acting sphere. So they reached out to women that do like OnlyFans and cam modeling and stuff like that and said, hey, we need pretty people. We will pay you X amount of money if you want to fly, and we'll pay for your flights down here to be on a show. And some of them did it because it's for them, it's basically your own boss when you're in those other fields. When you're working for Hollywood, you're working for somebody else, right? So you've got the flexibility of working when you want. You've got the beauty. So as long as you're exercising, you're looking good, you're going to keep making money. And you've got a whole simp culture out there that's willing to fork over all their money to these girls just for some pictures or a video or some, I don't know what else they do, but that type of stuff. So yeah, you've got a big gap in beauty talent on screen because it's available on social media.
Which is so far afield from back in what we would consider Hollywood's golden age, right? Because you'd have these gals who were, you know, for whatever the beauty standard was at the time, they were beautiful and they were gorgeous. And then on top of that, they could act, they could sing, they could dance. Right.
Then there was Nancy Reagan, who was known for other things. I'm sorry. I was older when I found out those stories. I'm like, wow, okay, Nancy Reagan. Folks, Google Nancy Reagan stories. You'll learn a lot about the 80s. Sorry. No, you got the OnlyFans women of today. That's the modern day equivalent. Somebody in the chat asked, what's a cam model? It's just that. It's just like,
yeah, it's still around apparently, because it's funny. I know a guy who's in the tech sector. And when I was living out in San Francisco for a bit there, he ended up marrying a cam model that never performed with anyone else. And I met her and she was really gorgeous. And I think she's from like Romania or Italy or some they're in that region. And they're still together to this day. And that was 8 years ago. Oh, wow. They have like 3 kids. Oh, and wow. It's like, okay, man, but he made a lot of money in tech, and I guess he spent a lot of money to get her to come over to the United States. But they're happy. And every once in a while, my sisters, they're friends on Facebook, she'll get a post saying like, this is what we did this week. And it's like them going out to the beach with the kids and stuff like that. And it's weird, but yeah, the camming is still out there.
Can that be the quote for tonight? The camming is still out there.
Camming is still out there. Yes.
So the truth is out
there.
For
the Triple X Files. Yes.
Yeah. The Triple X Files. Oh my goodness.
Aurora Uplinks, thank you very much for your super chat. We're going to read both of these folks, and then we're going to start talking about all sorts of things tonight. Spy thriller novel about a YouTuber hired as bait. There you go, Andrew. There's your starting point.
All right.
I've always.
It sounds like a comedy.
I've always had an idea about a thriller. It's not necessarily a spy thriller, but there are like 5 stories in my brain that I always kind of wanted to tell. And now that I'm at a point with comics, I will tell this story eventually. But it's it's my dark, twisted. It's not even twisted. It's just a dark thriller. I'll tell you that story in the future, folks. Sorry, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll tell them about this, and then I go, wait, no, you'll spoil the stuff in the future. So
yeah, you can't spoil it to your audience. You have to tell it to people that would like help you get it going.
Yeah, tell it to your beta readers or the people you're trying to sell it to.
I need a way to freeze time or enter the hyperbolic time chamber and just work. And it's like, all right, I'm going to get this one done, and then and draw it, and then write the next one and do that. And just keep on moving. That's what I need. Folks, anybody can get me a lead on a used hyperbolic time chamber, I greatly appreciate that.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, 3 days out in the real world equals was a year in the hyperbolic time chamber, or the room of spirit and time, as it's called in Japan. I'm down with that.
The only flaw, though, is that you age inside there to a degree, so you'll die lot earlier in the year calendar year than you will.
If the trade-off is getting all of the stuff done that I'd like to fit in, like in just that 1 year, like there's just because in the Room of Spirit and Time, you have like a whole setup that you're set up with food, you got a bed, you have living quarters, right? So just do that and get all the work done possible within that 1 year time frame. Come out, sure, I'm a year older, whatever, but I got about as much stuff done as I likely would have gotten done in 3 years or more.
Oh yeah, there's that possibility, but you also have the options like, hey, Andrew, he released 30 books in 1 year, but he also died at the age of 40. but he's really 80 inside.
Well, I'm pretty close to that then.
Bye, man.
I had a good run.
I would definitely do that for sure. I would just pencil so many pages. Gotta be great. Oh well, one can dream. Sam Owen, known as Samoan, says, "Hey Jeff, you ever think of putting the text of your video essays on Substack? Just an idea. Also, This Is Us sucks. LOL." Dude, This Is Us is like the show that I know to avoid based on the commercials. It was always like, oh, it's the show with that one lady married to that one guy. It always felt like the flip of the American sitcom trope of, fat husband, hot wife. I was like, oh, it's the show where they flip the trope. All right, not for me. I'm not really, because it didn't even look like it was funny either.
It wasn't. It was actually sappy melodrama. And I remember when some of my colleagues were like saying, wow, this is just a really great show. I'm like, really? It's just kind of low-hanging fruit. Oh, look, an actor who's so famous and he can get anyone he wants, but really he's lovelorn. It's like, yeah, we've seen that thing before. Give me something new. Oh, the fat lady with the hot husband. Don't buy it. I'm sorry, just don't. Oh, the fat lady's the twin of the good-looking guy. Don't buy it. It's just.
I never watched it because of that. It's like I would see those commercials. It's like a tragedy of life, blah, 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 blah. This Is Us next on NBC. It's like, okay, that looks, and like everybody looked so solemn. I'm like, this is funny to me, not,
well,
whatever.
Yeah. Oh no, you're 100% correct. The real gimmick was the fact that they told it in 2 different time periods. So they would set up this is the family, and then they go to the present. And they're like, okay, dad's here, and then it opens the door, and it's not the actor who's the dad. It's some completely different looking guy. And you're like, oh, there's your mystery. Why is this guy referred to as dad? Now we got to watch this show to find out how this couple that we fell in love with in the pilot broke up.
Yeah.
And it's a red herring. It's fan baiting. It's all the things that you don't really want to do in a show because you'll never stick the landing. And you know what? Guess what? They didn't.
Sam, I'm glad to know that I was right. My confirmation bias, or you've confirmed my bias. Also, too, I had never thought about putting that on Substack. I'll look into it. Do you guys know anything about Substacks?
No. Other than Mike Barron has one, and he posts some funny things here and there.
Mike Barron just posts funny things everywhere. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, I got his I got his work somewhere. Oh, anyway. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. So, folks, hit that thumbs up button, and we're going to start talking about, I guess, the first title, Image. We talked about the second one already, House of the Dragon. If you have anything to say about House of the Dragon, the finale, let us know down in the comments. We're reading them all the time. But, folks, we live in an interesting time where we can get things that are almost great, and we get things that then do something to make them terrible to some, annoying to others, and overall disappointing in a couple different ways. That is a way you can describe Batman Caped Crusader. Now, I have put out a full review of the entire series, which you can check out. I don't go into episode by episode detail. I talk about the good, the bad, the atmosphere, and I let you guys decide based on that if you're going to watch it. So don't look for a specific number score at the end, but you'll get a recommendation based on what I think you might like. So I spent Friday watching this and the weekend getting the review ready. And I know, Script, you have watched it, and Andrew, you've watched some of it. Let's start talking about Script. What did you think of it overall? Because we'll talk about the woke elements and all the social changes in just a moment.
I think Ed Brubaker was the only one in the room trying to make a good show out of everybody there, because you have the aesthetic style. Like, this is some of the best animation Warner Brothers has put out with DC in a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's wasted. I personally hate Hamish Linklater. I think he's a hack of an actor. I never liked him in what he does. I don't like his face. It sounds like he's got a frog in his throat all the time. I don't know how the hell he managed to get into this industry and stay in it as long as he has. He must know where some bodies are buried, because he's not attractive. He doesn't sound good, and he sucks overall, and he's never convincing, and he's very one note.
Tell us how you really feel.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Even in some of the Netflix shows that he's done, where he was like the priest and everything, he doesn't play it with any interest or nuance. This show vacillates between woke and interesting, in the sense that the woke stuff is not done to push an agenda. It's done to take advantage of a gimmick, which is different. And then the other part too, and this is probably the only part that I'll actually defend on, is that they're not trying to make this an authentic 1940s show. They're trying to make this a Batman show with a 1940s aesthetic. So the rules of 1940s do not apply with regards to the character relationships. It only applies to the visuals. And that's the one thing that you have to take into account on this. Because they're basically trying to say, yeah, we just like the style, but we still want to have Commissioner Gordon Black, just like how Jeffrey Wright was black in the Batman. We still want to have, Renee Montoya a lesbian, because she's a lesbian in the comics, and she's implied, so subtly, not so subtly implied, to be a lesbian in one of the animated series. That part there is, I get it, but it's like, okay, fine. Right, you're leading into this aspect. All I can say is thank God that James Gunn casted actual Ginger to play Jimmy Olsen, because they did change him to black from Supergirl and other variations afterwards. But yeah, like I'm fine with the Alfred model, because Alfred originally was fat and bald. So that was cool. What's funny is that if you did just change the color palette on James Gordon and made him a white guy instead of a black guy, he'd still look good. I mean, the models look good.
He looks like Commissioner or Mayor Hill from Batman the Animated Series.
A little bit more, yeah, I think so, because of because the mustache is also black instead of white, which it should be the same color tone. But that's a nitpick there. Some of the plots are actually not bad. It's crazy. I really like the plot for the first episode. I just hate the fact that they made Penguin Oswalda as opposed to maybe Ma Parker would have been more appropriate, because I liked the idea of the gimmick that Rupert Thorne, thank you, spacing out for a second there. Rupert Thorne outwitted her into killing both her kids. I'm like, that's a clever noir-y style thing. It's just like, it feels like you wasted it on a gimmick, as opposed to like Ma Parker being a mob enforcer at a war with the Thorne family. One of the big gimmicks is that she loves her family, and if you could get her to actually be willing to kill one of her kids because of betrayal, that has way more impact than just creating two new characters to be the children of a gender swapped penguin. Mm-hmm. And it's like you're just wasting these really good story points on a gimmick to just say, hey, here's the penguin. Now she's a woman, and she's doing cabaret stuff, and she's got her iceberg lounges on a boat. And it's like, it's just, they're good ideas, but they don't mesh well, because you're mixing and matching things for inauthentic talking points, as opposed to, can you actually really exploit this to the fun that it deserves? And the Harley Quinn stuff,
I did not like that at all.
It didn't feel. I mean, I appreciate the swing that they did for it, but so much of it just didn't work out. It's like it's not as reflective to the character that it could be, in the sense, because Commissioner Gordon, they're trying to make like Commissioner Gordon, but they made him a little bit more too bland, in my opinion. I think he's missing some of the life and some of the doubts and whatnot. But Harley Quinn is unrecognizable as Harley Quinn. Like, as a psychiatrist, as a clown, she's a completely unique character. It would have been better just to give her a new name and work that way. Because the stuff that she's doing, just objectively, the stuff she's doing quote unquote woke stuff, but she's framed as the bad guy. So it's literally giving you the message that this is wrong. So the whole kidnap a rich person and force them to give their wealth over to charities and unions and things of that nature, that is wrong. And it's a very social justice perspective, but the show is telling you this is wrong. So it's actually an anti-message. And I hope people pick up on that, because again, the certain players in entertainment, especially in the news media, have been trying to condition you to take a look at this stuff and say it's woke and how dare you and it's a betrayal of Harley Quinn. It's like, well, no, she's still doing something bad. And the bad stuff she's doing is stuff that you already recognize as bad. So it's not the show promoting it as being good. It's the show saying, no, this is bad. So I hope you guys have the literacy to and the wherewithal to pick up on that and not try and think that they're trying to say, yes, rich people should be giving away all their money to the ungrateful people that are trying to exploit them. Because that's the opposite of what that episode was trying to do. They had no idea what to do with Barbara Gordon.
No, but she's in so much of the damn show.
It's mostly her show. I saw your video and I agree with you on that. It's mostly her show. And I will say this, the one part where, they think that they're going to kill Gordon and it ends up being Barbara and not Commissioner. I'm like, that's a good noir twist, but it's wasted because you're putting her in a position that she's not supposed to be in. I thought the carnival episode was interesting and I laughed, not in a positive way. I laughed like in a scoffing way at the gimmick that all the kids are just one version of a Robin.
Yep.
They did not do it subtly as well. Like, this is why I said, like, Ed Brubaker was clearly trying to write a great Batman show, but he kept on getting probably usurped by Bruce Timm, who hasn't been Bruce Timm since Justice League Unlimited ended, and J.J. Abrams, who is a key producer on this, who pitched this to Warner Brothers, tried to sell it to them, and WB said, we're not putting this on Max. We don't really want it. We'll give you the option to get a distribution somewhere else. And that's actually a strike against JJ's big $500 million deal that he had with Warner Brothers, because everything he has pitched to them, they have not liked and they've rejected, which means that he hasn't gotten a cent from that $500 million yet. And I think he's never going to get one, because even the Trays recently talked about him getting Glenn Powell and Jen Ortega to do a movie that he's written, and Warner Brothers might be doing it. They're not going to do it, even with those two names attached. I don't think they're going to do it. I think that it's going to go to another studio somewhere in the near future. Here's something that was actually kind of funny. They bring in Flash from year one, and they also race swap him, so he's a black bad guy, a corrupt black bad guy officer. I'm like, that's something you wouldn't see in a normal woke show. So that's something interesting.
No, as you said, you saw my video. I frame it to let people know what's in this show, because people are going to have issues with a lot of that stuff, no matter what the reasoning behind it is.
Mm-hmm.
The female Penguin stuff I thought was dumb. I didn't think it was because these characters kind of go away quickly for the most part, and you kind of move on to something better. Because I thought the female Penguin stuff was annoying, but it was also a cool episode because it felt like an old Fleischer cartoon. You remember the Superman episode with the giant gun and Superman has to punch his way up it?
Yep.
That the giant cannon and that just kind of like
disguised as the umbrella. It was a great gimmick. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you go to the Hollywood one with Clayface essentially, and that was cool and atmospheric.
That's probably one of the better episodes too. Yeah.
But then it's all about Montoya though. She does all the detecting and Batman stands around in the background. I'm like, oh great.
Well, so I'll let you in on something. So this is actually a callback to the Shadow. And the reason it's a callback to the Shadow is that the Shadow is considered a supporting protagonist in his early books, because what he's doing is he's using his agents to do some of the legwork while he is basically taking their information and putting the pieces together from other sources. So we're following Montoya doing her investigation while Batman is kind of also piecing the pieces based on other parts that we're not seeing on screen. It works in a novel form because you can actually expand on that a bit more, but to condense it down to a 25-minute episode really kind of doesn't quite jive so well. And I think that's one of the reasons is also they're trying to do a callback to that. But I think because they're making a Barbara Gordon episode, they're making a Detective Montoya episode, they're making a Harvey Dent centric two Harvey Dent centric episodes. They're trying to actually have Batman. They're trying to justify Batman's lack of interaction to build up more of his mysterious nature overall with the show. And then they tried to do that seasonal arc where Batman would keep calling Alfred Pennyworth until the very end when he started calling him Alfred. And I'm like, you didn't earn that. And you didn't set up or establish the rules why that's the relationship you have.
Yeah, I didn't even, when it happened at the end, I went, oh, okay, that's growth. But then when I thought about it, I went, I guess that is important. I guess that's enough. It wasn't enough to I don't know, fool me. It just stuck out like a sore thumb. I got hyper focused on it. So many of those things, like you say, they do not feel earned. They just kind of tack it on. It's like, oh yeah, and there you go. Oh well, I guess the whole picture's there. I I do, like I said in my video too, though. I would watch a second season of this show if they could trim it down and kind of fix some of the dumber elements. Because I really liked the Gentleman Ghost episode. I like seeing Batman fight something supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the Carnival episode with the it was kind of spooky. You know, it felt very like Halloweeny.
Yeah.
And then
I like the Catwoman episode to a degree too. It showed Bruce
Yeah.
in a different light, and it worked.
I liked the Catwoman episode quite a bit because it was a break from the Renee Montoya and Barbara Gordon stuff, because it was mostly Catwoman and Batman. So I was like, cool. And I loved the design. And it just was fun to watch. That's kind of the tragedy of the show, and that's why the video is titled the way it is. It is a tragedy because there are so many great visual elements. There are so many things in this show. Like, I don't like the design of this Batman, but when watching this show, I thought it looked great. I thought it looked awesome. I was really on board.
Mm-hmm.
And then
the reason they did this design is twofold. The first part is that it's close enough to the original publication of the character that they can recopyright that image, so that if you wanted to do it public domain, you have what's called the ambiguity error when it comes to that. So if you want to do a Batman comic and you want to do Batman in the costume that he was in Detective Comics 14, can't remember. Sorry. You can't do that because they've already done a cartoon version of it, and they also done another visual of it in another print. So here's the question: is like, well, which one are you copying? Well, you claim to be doing the one from 1939, but I'm sorry, Warner Brothers and DC and Detective Comics have already republished a brand new original story with that exact same outfit, with that same look. It's technically under a new copyright from that date on. It's no longer public domain. I'm sorry, but you can't do your public domain Batman because that costume or that look is already taken. You have to come up with a completely different look. You could probably use the name Batman, but you have to also come up with an original way of writing that name out on the title cover, because you can't have Batman and all the logos for it are already individually trademarked as well. So yeah, it's a bunch of loops to jump through. I mean, I know Mark Millar did on Twitter, like, he's got a Superman story he wants to do. He's going to wait till public domain. He has to come up with a completely original design for Superman if he wants to get away with that, because DC will destroy him if he tries. And I don't think he's fully aware of that yet, but he's probably learning pretty quickly now, because Mickey Mouse, people have already been cracking down. Disney's already been cracking down on people trying to use Steamboat Willie on their stuff, because Steamboat Willie's been actually reused in other animation and other publications recently. That renews that copyright on to that point, so it's no longer public domain. Like the movie is, so you can put it on your channel and do it, but you can't make anything more with that, because which Steamboat Willie are you using as a public? Are you using the public domain one, or are you using the one that they reissued recently in the last 5 to 10 years? They're identical models. You cannot, get away with that, unfortunately. And that's what's crazy here. But that's why I think they did this in this regard. They got Alfred Fat again, even though he didn't appear for several issues after Batman's initial release. You've got basically Batman in the original costumes, except for the fact that his gloves are black instead of purple. And you basically secured your protected IP for at least another 80 to 75 years.
I wasn't particularly fond of the design choice for Alfred, and I get why they did it, but I prefer the more slimmed down, like ex-Secret Service, or what was it, British Secret Service or MI6 or whatever he was.
He was a former spy, like good general. He worked for His Majesty. The
I like the Alfred where if somebody busts into the cave or the mansion and Bruce isn't around to handle things, he whoops their ass. I like that Alfred.
I like this Alfred's voice a lot, though. I really liked the voice acting in this.
Oh yeah, Jason Watkins, good guy.
Yeah, I like the Alfred where Joker tries breaking into the Batcave and gets his butt handed to him by Alfred. That's my Alfred.
I mean, it also defeats the purpose of Batman if Alfred could do it. I mean, here's the thing. So Jason Watkins did Alfred Pennyworth, and he was actually doing not just his normal like British accent, but he's also trying to give it a little bit of Zephram Embelast, who did the animated series voice for majority of the original series, tone on there. Hamish Linklater, I don't know what he was doing. I mean, he said good lines, that worked, but it's like his voice is forced. I mean, that's the best way I could put it.
Yeah, he wasn't my favorite Batman at all. I had issues too with Diedrich Bader as Harvey Dent because he sounded so similar to his normal, like, I know he was doing a different voice, but he still sounds like the same guy.
Yeah.
So it kind of took me out of that. I liked Catwoman voice. I liked who was he? Brother Voodoo? Or no, Brother Voodoo is Marvel, right? Who's the shaman he talked to?
Oh, God.
But I thought the voice was great for that.
Yeah. Heck, you have Jamie Chung who played Dr. Harleen Quinzel. Now she's a gorgeous actor.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, she was fine for it, but just like why? All the stuff that they did for it. I thought it was kind of funny that they got Cedric Yarborough to play Rupert Thorne because Cedric is a black guy and Rupert Thorne's a white guy clearly in this. So it's like, well, you're going to be upsetting a lot of social justice warriors with that, having a black guy play a white criminal.
they'll just be like, hey, it's a lead role, and they'll just kind of keep it going.
Yeah, and that was Christina Ricci playing Catwoman, and I thought she did pretty good.
Oh yeah,
very eccentric and interesting, and I liked her maid. I thought that was kind of funny. There was good chemistry there.
I enjoyed so much of that. I just wish it flowed better overall, and I wish it didn't have. I don't know. I just wanted more Batman. I get that it was trying to be the mystique of Batman, but like, it's 2024. We've seen every version of Batman. We're now back at this version. I mean, everybody expects the character. Just kind of maybe pull back focus on Barbara Gordon by about 25%. it was so much Barbara Gordon, man. Like, folks, if you're thinking about watching this, just be prepared for Barbara Gordon. She's unlikable. She's kind of bitchy.
Which makes me so sad because I love Babs in the comics.
You're not going to love this version because she is Queen.
All the way up through when she was Oracle, too. Like, she was fantastic then. And, man, they're either doing redheads dirty in the writing or freaking it's the ginger side.
Well, I mean, she's still technically a redhead. She just happens to also be black.
Yeah, I didn't buy it for 2 seconds when I saw that design. That's why it didn't even occur to me that they were race swapping Gordon and Barbara, Jim and Barbara, until like they actually name they dropped the Gordon name, and I'm like, wait, what? That's actually Jim and Barbara? Because that's what threw me off. I'm like, if they're gonna race swap them, they don't usually like keep the red hair.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, it's hard to actually justify. I can't remember where I heard this from. I think it was in a Zoom meeting with some guys because we were talking about the fact that, oh yeah, they've race swapped some characters, and it's like, well, technically, Warner Brothers race swapped these characters prior to this show because one of my friends in there, who's like kind of like an up and coming talent agent, he was talking about how like Jeffrey Wright is technically the first race swap of Jim Gordon. And the girl who played Barbara Gordon in the Batgirl movie that was canned by Warner Brothers was also race swapped as well. So the way that he was coming at it is he's saying, like, from Warner Brothers' perspective, when it comes to the Batman IP, this is going to be the new model that they follow, at least, or that they followed at the time that this was originally put in production, which was about 3.5 years ago. Because again, this show is getting a second season because they made the first 2 seasons back to back. That's just how they do car animation recently. So we can kind of call it a race swap, and I think that's kind of fair, but it's like it's already happened before. Like, it's basically they're just continuing it. They're trying to say, no, we want to match the continuity of the Batman because Jim Gordon was black in that movie. We think it.
No, yeah, I'm familiar with the strategy because I
think it's inauthentic because it's like you're doing a Batman show. You're making a callback to a canceled Batgirl film and then a poorly received Batman movie by leaning into the fact that we're going to keep on the continuity choice of, yes, Jim Gordon is going to be a black man. His daughter is going to be a black woman. All for what? right? Like all for what? Points to
Well,
who?
it's not the first time they've done that either, because back when DC did the New 52, and they race swapped Wally West,
Yep.
because that wasn't just supposed to be a different character. That was Dan DiDio, because he hates Wally West so much. They freaking
What did Wally West ever do to him?
Absolutely nothing. Dan
He replaced
DiDio,
Barry Allen, and he didn't like that.
yeah, it hurt his fifis. In a really mean way. But they did that, and then so for the live action CW Flash series, when they brought in Wally, they made him black.
Well, yeah, because they made Joe West black and they made Iris West black, and then the same thing again. That's Greg Berlanti, because he also made. I'm sorry, I'm just texting my buddy now just to confirm if it was him. He's saying yes. He's talking about how he's actually bringing this up here. I'll read what he says. Yes, because when they brought in the dad for the Flash, they wanted him specifically to be black, and I remember. Sorry, and I remember thinking, why even bother at this point? This is him thinking about this back, I think, in 2014. So yeah, like they changed that. Then they changed on Supergirl. They get James Olsen. They make him a black guy. They make him a 6'5" black guy.
Shit.
Like it's not even James Olsen. So why even bother? And then I think they turned him into Guardian as a superhero in that show.
Yeah.
And it's like,
dude looked like he should have been playing a young Jon Stewart.
Yeah, if he would have been brilliant for that.
Or freaking Icon or something, right?
Yeah. Anything. John Henry Irons. Who cares? But the thing is that he's. It's not enough that you're just doing it. It's like, okay, we're gonna race swap. We're gonna change the playbook here, and
they try to make that the new standard, because then they race swapped Iris West in the not Flash movie.
Well, I mean, they did that because it had already been done in the TV show. Like that's why they didn't want to.
Right. Again, it's just them trying to double down as though this is the new standard, and it's like, even if you want to try and make that the new standard, it's still not what the character was.
Well, not only that, it's the fact that they don't even honor the character. So it's like, okay, you're going to race swap. Great. What are you going to do as a result of that? Nothing. Okay. Are you going to make the character good? Well, no, we don't have to, because we already have the gimmick that they're a different race. So the audience is going to fill in the gaps for us. It's like, no, that's not your job as the writer. Your job is not to have the audience do their headcanon to justify it. Your job is there has to be a reason why you made them this way. I mean, wasn't Wally West's main squeeze the woman that he married? Isn't she like part Vietnamese or part Asian?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Linda Park is
Linda Park. So why don't they? Why instead of just doing a regular Flash show, why not do a Wally West show where he's dating Linda Park? There's your diversity quota right there.
Asians are the new white people. That's why.
Well, they would be if they knew how to drive.
Oh.
I'm sorry, it's too easy of a joke.
I approve.
Welcome
yeah.
to Hot Fingers, the podcast.
All I'll just say is, put them behind the wheel and you'll see how white they really are.
Not at all.
I jest, guys. You are. I know some very, very talented Asian drivers.
As in, they haven't caused any accidents yet?
No, as talented as in they're good at math.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's the default.
No,
that's like, oh, you're a greyhound, so you're a fast running dog. Okay.
Let's see what our friend Mariner's saying real quick, guys. I think I know why Bruce Timm made Black Barbara the only woman in the show thin. This woman, the only thin woman in the show.
No, Catwoman's thin.
She was like upper size.
She was hippie, but she had a thin waist. Yeah.
But like, man, Montoya was super dense, and
oh god, yeah,
Harley Quinn was like
Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn had mosquito bite boobs.
It's like a type out there that they're trying to put. It's like, oh, okay.
I find men who like very, very, very small breasts like that to be creeps, because it's like you want boobs that are not developed, and that gets you into an area that is evil and uncomfortable. So.
Let's see.
Big boobs are always better.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I support to read the chat. I mean, who doesn't? 1 for yes, 2 for no, folks. Yes to support, 2 for no. No judgment. Everybody's got their own taste.
Support with push-up.
Put that across a couple platforms real quick. If you're listening on Rumble, press 1 as well. There we go. 3 1s in a row from World Class BS.
With a push-up, even if it's not necessary.
I mean,
because
I draw a lot of my warm-up figures based on real people. And so some of the proportions people will see in my drawings are like, oh, Jeff, you're obsessed with this. I'm like, no, I just draw from those types of models. They're out there. Script, you're right. Yeah, all ones. This show is all ones, folks. We have Lester San Jose. Thank you for being a member, sir. Xavier to God, we appreciate you. Shribbles08, Aurora Uplinks. Jamie Jackson, thank you, as well as our friend Ryan Lynn.
See, you're all men of culture as well.
Mike has bad knees. I just love that screen name.
It's a great name. It's a great name, and he's a great dude. He came to our Ripaverse booth in Denver.
Oh, cool.
Well, Mike, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm
shout out to you,
bad
Mike.
Knees.
I can freaking relate.
Lots of ones from Jamie Jackson. All right. Oh, we also had our friend Xavier God says, rate these villains from the least to greatest. Joker, Catwoman, Bane, Mr. Freeze, Two-Face, Riddler, Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, Penguin, Harley, and Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul is dead.
That's a long
list. Well, see, it depends on which age you're in, because once you get to the Bronze Age, Catwoman's not necessarily a villain. She's just an antagonist.
Yeah, she's just still a terrible person that every now and then bangs Bruce.
She's a prostitute.
I don't like Catwoman.
That was Frank Miller's introduction. She was never a prostitute until Frank Miller got a hold of her, because Frank Miller really likes prostitutes.
I mean, look, I try not to judge. To each his own. But there's some themes in his work. Howard Chaykin has themes in his work too.
For me, I'd probably put, because I honestly don't like Catwoman. She's gonna go on the bottom. Followed by Penguin, then Poison Ivy. A lot of these villains are actually really good villains. We just rarely ever see decent, if any, adaptations of them, because they keep going back to the same freaking characters all the time. God, it's hard to do a lot of these because I love Mr. Freeze. Riddler's my favorite Batman villain. He's going to go at the top. But so next, I guess I'll go Scarecrow, Ra's al Ghul. I love Classic Harley. Classic Harley is a stitch. Classic Harley with Joker is fantastic. So then I'll go Harley, then I'll go Joker, then I'm going to go Two-Face, Mr. Freeze, Bane, Riddler. See, that's hard to keep track of because it's so damn many. What the hell, Xavier to God? Thank you for the $5 super chat.
Yes, thank you, sir. I gotta put Joker at the top. I'm gonna be basic like that. I do like the Joker. I know he's been overdone to death, and even Heath Ledger's version.
He's a great villain. I'm like, sick of him.
That classic Mark Hamill Joker from the animated series, or Jack Nicholson.
Well, even in the Arkham trilogy.
Yeah, like Joker. That is so above the rest for me that but I don't like every version. I don't like the overly dark or the weirdly sexual Joker. I like a very specific. It's really the visual of Batman wearing the dark and Joker literally being white. And usually it's the opposite side, like in Cowboys, the black hat versus the white hat. And I like that stark dynamic. I think the Joker looks visually interesting compared to Batman. Riddler, same too. I like, depending on the Riddler look. I don't like when they do the suits. I like the big onesie with all the question marks on it. It looks so stupid. It's like a pair of pajamas, but that's the funny part.
I like the suit with the bowler hat and the cane.
I can get into that, but like to me, it's like he should wear that when he goes out and does stuff in public. But then I do like when he has that stupid
fair.
It's just a fun look. It makes me chuckle every time I see it. Poison Ivy is going to be at the bottom. I think she's pretty dumb. Visually, she comes up with some cool stuff. but I grew up with her on the cartoon where it's an eco-friendly episode and a message every time. So
she's also a plant cannibal because she rather eats plants than meat. And I'm like, no, that's horrible. You're eating your own kind. If you should never eat plants. You should be eating the animals because their soil, their waste and stuff feeds your plant life. She's this is the other part too that I've actually noticed in some rereads of classic comic books and stuff, is that some of the writers they get the gimmick, but they don't understand they don't understand the execution of it. It's like, oh, Poison Ivy, she's an eco-terrorist and she loves plants, so we're going to make her a vegetarian. No, that's not how that works, man.
That's like, oh, this person's an animal lover, but they also constantly are eating meat or something.
They're an animal lover, so they're going to wear fur coats and they're going to eat meat. Right? And stuff. It's like, well, now you made them a literal animal lover, not an animal defender. And
oh, that could go places. Don't get the furries started. Script.
Yeah.
Oh God, don't say that word.
So
they're not real people.
Neither are flat earthers.
Also, it's properly pronounced Resh Al Ghul. The Raz is considered a peasant pronunciation in Arabic. And it's also a more colloquial version in normal Arabic-speaking countries because they have lost their culture. This is quotes from a very old man who was an Arab who spoke about this type of stuff. And
I remember this.
And it's a common mispronunciation because it's not Raz, because that actually has a different meaning in ancient Aramaic. It's Arish.
Yeah.
Because the apostrophe S with a conjunction with the A for Al, which is the demon's head, has a sh sound to it because it's supposed to be a whisper. So
I do know this. However, my habit is to call him Raz. So that's what I still do.
Batman Begins, which means that you guys watched Batman Begins before you watched the animated series.
No, I did not.
I didn't watch it, but I watched it a bunch as a kid, and then it wasn't on TV, and I didn't have the DVDs until 2008. So
it's 3 years after Begins. Yeah, so then you'd have more.
I never owned the DVDs, at least not yet. I'm gonna get the 4K remaster.
See, because I would
ever make one.
So someone in 1999 ripped all the VHS of Batman the Animated Series and all the episodes that are live recorded and put them online to be downloaded and watched, and that's what I got my hands a hold of at that point. So I used to watch that all the time after like classes in college.
I just want the whole old DC animated universe on Blu-ray minimum, but preferably 4K at some point in the near future.
Well, they've got to redo some aspects of it because apparently
they got to redo Superman because there were some weird conversion issues, right?
Well, actually, no, they actually didn't finish all the post effects. So then the pilot in the 3-parter at the end, when Superman is flying outside of Lex Luthor's office, he's literally hovering in front of a green screen because they use chroma key effects in that, so they didn't actually fully do it. And Batman the Animated Series, there are 3 variations of that Blu-ray set that went out. The ones that were pressed in the northern Canadian region, everything is immaculate on them. The ones that are pressed in the US and UK have sound effects errors and dialogue looping errors as well. So there's a channel called Damn Fool Idealistic Crusader who made a laundry list of them all. And I thought that was on my Blu-ray set, but I went through every single episode to try and identify it, and it's not on my pressing, which means that they did the conversion at Warner Brothers, but when they sent off the files for stamping, one set was probably the assembly set, the ones that was before the refinement, and the other one was the refinement. And someone who was sending the stuff to the Canadian pressing sent the refinement ones, and the ones that went to the other parts did the ones that were right previous stage. So there are thousands of copies that have those special effects issues or sound effects issues.
That's a travesty.
Most people won't pick up on, which is why Warner Brothers hasn't re-released or done a recall or re-released it, but they're out there. And then the ones that I got lucky because I found out mine was pressed in BC and shipped from BC to here. It wasn't a China press. It wasn't anything else. And the pressings that were done in the US were done from like some little ones in like Wisconsin area and all the other stuff where you have the disc rot and whatnot. And then a couple of them international and brought over. It's basically they botched up the file transfers to the various places that they were doing all their pressing for it. So yeah, but I would love them to do I love Warner Archive to get onto that and then do it redo it properly and then throw in the animated series for Superman and throw in the Justice League stuff as well. And make it a full
Batman Beyond. And
sure, Batman.
I'd be over the moon. Batman the Animated Series, was it Batman the New Animated Adventures, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, and Batman Beyond. Those 6 series.
Those are the best cartoons maybe ever, or some of the best cartoons ever.
I could die happy.
Nostalgia is a powerful tool because I've gone back. Well, because I'm an artist, I do watch a lot of animation just for the artistry of it. I don't necessarily watch these shows because I'm trying to relive childhood nostalgia. It's like, oh, I just really want to look at something that's dark and colorful at the same time. But there is, a conversation that's usually had about what's better, Batman or X-Men. X-Men doesn't hold a candle to the production level of the Batman cartoon. Like, it's not even comparable. Like, go back and watch it. One is clearly second rate, and the other one is like world class in every definition of the word. Even though the X-Men has bitchin' music and great voice acting,
Batman had music, voice acting, and animation. Like, it had all of it.
Yeah, I loved X-Men and Spider-Man growing up, but those shows were on a production level. Just it's night and day. Comparative to the DC animated stuff,
because it was Marvel cheap. That's the problem. Like, if you take a look at the Incredible Hulk cartoon series, if you take a look at the Fantastic Four cartoon series of that period, and the Iron Man ones, you can tell that they were done for a third of what normally would be done for a cartoon. And in the 90s, they just did not care. They're just
quality animation is not cheap.
It isn't. But the thing is, there's a budget threshold, because you take a look at what Warner Brothers was doing. They were on budget and on time with a lot of their animations, and they did their shortcuts. But the thing is, they knew how to do them well enough. You'd take a look at Batman the Animated Series, Tiny Toons, Animaniacs, Freakazoid, Pinky and the Brain. Yes. All of those shows had amazing animation, and it's all done. It's just immaculate, and voice acting and pacing and storytelling. It's all great. Then you take a look at the stuff that was Fox Kids through Marvel, and you're like, yeah, you're just crapping this out. You just don't care. And that's why, that's why I never really liked the idea that Disney would get into Marvel, because it's like, well, Marvel kind of phones it in on their cartoon department. And then Disney also phones it in a lot of other areas too. And now you've got these two companies where some of the worst parts of those two companies are working together up against some of the best parts of those two companies working together. And it looks like one side has taken over for at least the last 6 years. When they got together on the live action part, something went right, because I will say this, one of their X-Men cartoons not X-Men Evolution, I think, but Wolverine and the X-Men cartoon.
Wolverine and the X-Men is actually really good.
It was really good.
I have that on
Spider-Man
DVD.
Was far better than it had any right to be.
Damn right.
And then Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, also amazing.
Yes. Also excellent, yes.
And then
it had Warbird, Carol Danvers.
And then they canceled those shows, and they replaced it with Ultimate Spider-Man Web Warriors, which a lot of those episodes were written by Paul Dini, who Paul Dini was not Paul Dini anymore. He can't write the way he did in the 80s and early 90s. And then you had the new Avengers cartoon, where I think in the pilot, they literally have a controversy over Sam Wilson's grandmother's cookies that he brought in on the first day being an Avenger. It's like, and the animation does not reflect a kid's show. So it was completely off tone and dumb. And I didn't watch any of that stuff afterwards. I saw a couple of episodes of each. I would hear ancillary commentary from my friends, and it was like, this does not sound like it's good at all. The only thing that they did right is they said Miles Morales isn't Spider-Man, he's Kid Arachnid. I'm like, that's better than calling him Spider-Man. That's only point it gets. I'm sorry.
Dude, I feel the same way. The shows that got canceled were some of the best. That's why that the end of phase 1 felt so cool, because it was like the Avengers. The movie turned out great. You had all these new cartoons. There was hope Spider-Man was coming back. All of this stuff, you're just kind of like, oh man, Marvel's like back. And we grew up in the 90s where it was there all the time. You had all these cartoons, you had everything, but then it kind of petered out, and it felt cool again to have it back. It had been quite some time. And then it all just kind of turned to crap really quickly. I'm past the age of watching these things. The Batman, this show, it was definitely for an older audience. It could have went a little further, but I'm glad it wasn't gritty Batman. I didn't really need to see him, busting teeth out and breaking arms and all this crap like the newer Batman does.
No, the closest he does is he hits 3 guys with his car, which I'm pretty sure they were dead.
They're dead. Those dudes are dead. I remember seeing that scene and I was like, dead.
Yeah, they're dead. And then, and this one was actually probably a terrible moment because it was a very horrible thing to show that Batman doesn't like guns, because he draws a gun, he shoots, he shoots 6 times around this guy's head, and then he just throws the gun away in disgust. And I'm like, you did not nail that properly.
Yeah.
Like that's not, you didn't do it well. I know why you did it, because it's like, yeah, we want to do a throwback that Batman used guns at the beginning. The reason that was changed was one part editorial, one part mandate to distinguish him further from the shadow, and then another part with on the writing side of things, which is, oh, it'd be more interesting if Batman started not killing the people that he did, because they killed the Joker initially, and someone in editorial said this character is too good, don't kill him off, find a way to bring him back because we could sell more books with him. And was a smart move, but it also leads to a little bit of a stagnation, which goes back to the super chat from Xavier God, is that you have this rogues gallery of repeatable villains, and then you have to ask yourself, well, why doesn't Batman take care of them? But it's not his responsibility to dish out capital punishment or that level of justice. His part is as a deterrent. It's the society asking society, why doesn't society kill them? I mean, there's a wonderful video by Chuck Dixon where he talks about the one story where Joker nearly gets executed at the electric chair. And it's like, oh, that's funny in one aspect, but it also raises a really important question. How is it easier for Joker to be convicted of a crime he didn't commit that actually warrants his execution, when all the other stuff with far more egregious evidence in his favor of a guilt doesn't return the same result? Like, it's a big glaring universal plot hole. And I think this has to do with the fact that one of the things that made Joker interesting in the Bronze Age is that he was rarely captured. He always got away or faked his death in some way to get away from that. So you didn't have to answer that question. Post Bronze Age, he would then be going to Arkham, and then he'd be exploiting the criminal justice system and the fact that they don't actually have, there's no real medical diagnoses for insanity. It's just they micromanagement with mental disorders. But in the courts and in law, there is a criminal insanity plea that you can do. And it's not the same as medical. It's completely distinct. But that's something that the Joker takes advantage of so that he doesn't go to regular prison and also can't be executed by the state, because he's sick and mental. And it is the duty of us to try and see if we can rehabilitate him, because he's not always acting in his right state of mind. But the joke is the fact that he's very much sane. He's very much in the right state of mind. The joke is on the people, making them think that he is crazy. And it goes to the same way where you have so many writers come in, they write Batman as if they're experiencing Batman from the perspective of Gotham City, as opposed to, no, you're supposed to be writing Batman from the perspective of Batman. He's not a nut job who wears a costume. He's a brilliant man who's using the costume to make people think that he's a nut job so that he can take advantage of them and get his job done. Yeah. But how many times has he been written like he's an obsessive, insane person, calling himself the GD Batman, and kidnapping kids and putting them in a cave and telling them to eat rats, Frank Miller. So yeah, like that. And I appreciated the aspect that was done a little bit too in this show. It's just like, yeah, he's a calculating detective who's using this costume as a gimmick. So far, I would have liked a lot more of him. I think, yes, the Gentleman Ghost episode was awesome. The 3 episodes that Ed Brubaker wrote were the Kiss of Catwoman, which was a fun one.
Yep.
The Night of the Hunters, that's with the Firebug. And that's where we see the corrupt cops.
Probably I like that.
More. And then Savage Night, which is the last episode with Two-Face.
Yeah, those were 3 of the best ones.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, I think Brubaker was fighting an uphill battle, because he's trying to write a good Batman story within the constraints that Bruce Timm and J.J. Abrams have put onto the show, with all their gimmicks and their desperate ploys.
There it is.
There we go. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. And it should have been great, man. It really should have been great. It should have been, if every element could have been as solid as the design elements, this, would have been amazing. But what we got, well, we just described to you, folks.
Yeah. And it pushes a little bit more boundaries, because characters actually die in this series. Like, not gruesomely, but they die. Like, they commit to the fact that, yes, they're dead. They don't just say, oh, he was winged and he's going to the hospital, which Batman did. The animated series did a few times. They did kill some characters off, but they did it in a far more TV friendly way. This one here, they're able to push the boundaries a little bit further. but not too much, because I will say this, they exercise some discipline. They're like, yep, we still suspect kids are going to watch this, so we'll go this far, but we're not going to go any further than that. And I thought that was a smart move. But listen, we're getting that second season whether we like it or not. I seriously doubt we'll get a third or fourth, because it's not tracking or trending on Amazon or anything of that nature. Warner Brothers doesn't want to have anything to do with J.J. Abrams, from what I've been hearing. And the only time you're going to know if something is good, Batman related, that's good, is if it premieres on Max, and with the exception of the Penguin, because that was that is their in-house produced thing that Matt Reeves has done, so they're stuck with that, and that's coming out this fall. And
I'm curious. I don't think I'm gonna go out of my way to watch it as quickly as I did this one. I just kind of wanted to, have a video on the topic.
Well, they're dropping this one weekly, so yeah, Batman, Cape Crusader, they dropped them all at once because they knew.
I'm glad they did. That's what I like about streaming. It's like, oh, I'd rather just commit to. It took me all day to get through it because, some of these episodes, I'm not, hypersensitive to the cultural issues where it turns me off. Oh, I gotta turn it off. I'm pissed. It's like, this was a lot to get through. Like, I'm waiting for these things that I want to happen. I need a second to get a drink and recharge. So I took breaks when watching this show to keep myself engaged, because if I just forced myself to sit through it all, probably would have got angry at some of this stuff. So I thought it was
I usually I find myself, I go into like its background mode. So I'll be watching it and then I'll lose interest and I'll start doing something else while still continuing to play until it captures my attention again. And that's it. Because I can't get angry at stuff because as much as I'd love to say, yes, there's a specific agenda in regards to what they're doing, only some players do that. Others are just trying to emulate what they think is going to score them points in Hollywood. So they're not even sincere about it. And so they're just doing it to do it. Like the Harley Quinn being Asian with a terrible body and overweight. That's just a gimmick to try and say, hey, look, diversity. Okay, we did it. Okay, fine. Okay, now let's get back to the actual thing. Like, that's literally how they casually do it. It's not like over at Disney where they're like, well, we think it's really important that we actually focus in on this stuff because we truly believe in it. No, in the rest of Hollywood, they're like, yeah, we know what this is. Just, okay, put it in there. Do we get it? Okay, check the box. Can we do something with it? Fine. Okay, good. Move on. Get back to the real work. Like, that's usually the attitude I've been seeing.
I like the honesty. That's important to me.
Yeah. I mean, Disney's not an honest company, never has been.
No.
Even when Walt was around, because again, he was lying to them about when he was going to pay them, pay his animators for many months.
Xavier to God, thank you for your great question. I hope I gave you a good enough answer. Poison Ivy's the bottom, Joker, Riddler, Two-Face. Mr. Free, Two-Face.
Mr. Freeze should be pretty lower because he's only got one gimmick, which is he's doing it for his wife.
Yeah, Mr. Freeze is just above Poison Ivy. And then I guess Ra's al Ghul, because I don't really care about him as much. Scarecrow. Two-Face is like top. I'll put Two-Face as number 3.
Two-Face is good because he's more of a tragic. Two-Face. He's a very tragic character, and I think
Two-Face can be done really well and be a really interesting character.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's gone though from this show already.
Yeah. Were you bothered by the fact that they switched the side of his face?
I didn't notice it, to be completely honest, until right now. I'm like, oh, I guess they did. I was interested in the design of this show because there were 2 characters that had heavy blacks for their design, and I found them interesting to look at. It was one of Cobblepot's sons, the blonde one, was so ugly,
but it worked really well, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I was when they killed him, I was like, damn it, I actually wanted to watch more of that character because he's very ugly. I know it's a stupid thing, but it's like the Dick Tracy villains. They're all hideous looking.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that. And Two-Face had like that heavy black around his face. They did it really interesting instead of, the big blue with the bushy eyebrow, which I do like that design. Age has not changed my opinion of Batman the Animated Series. It wasn't my first introduction to Batman, but it's the one that stuck with me, and it's the one that feels the most universal because it captures more than just the zeitgeist of the 80s like 89 does, and it's not trying to be Christopher Nolan. It's the big Batman that covers it all. And nothing will change that for me. But this one tries to be interesting in other ways, and visually, I do think it's a win.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would probably re-voice Batman to an actual actor.
Batman's voice bothered me in the one episode that I did watch for this show. It felt like it was somebody trying to do Kevin Conroy, but was completely incapable of it.
Yeah, that'd be Hamish Linklater.
Yeah, it was like that. No, at that point, like, just don't. When I was doing acting workshops and acting in college and things like that, every single instructor I had at the beginning of each term or at the beginning of each like cycle of classes would always say, you're going to inevitably draw upon the actors and actresses that you've seen and kind of like grown attached to in terms of you like how they do things, blah, blah, blah. Don't deliberately try to do that actor, because you know what any casting director is going to do? They're going to be like, oh, yeah, he's trying to do Tom Cruise. Why don't we just get Tom Cruise? Right? Somebody's trying to do a Kevin Conroy voice, but why don't we just get Kevin Conroy? Obviously, we can't anymore. But the point still stands. Like, stop trying to emulate somebody else one for one. Like, I'm a Sonic the Hedgehog fan. Like, I love. There's been a dozen, if not more, voice actors for that character,
but no one's
over
as
the
good
years.
as Jaleel White.
He's like my top two. He's in my top two. He's fantastic, but I like almost all of them, and it's fine. Like, all of them have something similar to them, a similar vibe, but none of them sound like they're trying to be the other one, right? And so it bothered me hearing this guy, this freaking jabroni, sound like he's trying to be Kevin Conroy, but he's clearly has no chops in terms of voice mimicry and impersonations.
No, it just felt too forced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like when Pete Holmes would do that parody of Batman, where it would be like just so over the top. That's how this one feels, but it's not done ironically. And you're like, okay.
No.
I wish we would. I like how he has a car phone. Like, that's the peak of the technology on this show. Like, somehow he has a phone in his car.
Well, those are real. They had car phones in the Model T.
Oh, they did?
Yep.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. They're one of the first accessories out there. I was always impressed by that too. It's like, wait, they had car phones? Like, yeah, because it still used radio frequencies at the same time. You just had to be on a different channel. But often your car phone lines would get crossed with other people on their car phones as well.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, I mean, they then went out of style for a while there until they figured out how to do it again. But yeah, it was they had the car phones back then. Now the turbine engines, that did not exist in 1940s.
No, there are so many things that did take me out of the immersion they were trying to, on the outside, seem like they were trying to build. Mm-hmm. I wish they could have stuck the landing in that a little more. It would have been special that way. I guess I'm being too optimistic, too hopeful that these things can make something important. They can make something important or impactful anymore. Like we say, you got a guy like J.J. Abrams who has to get his points in. He's got to get his angle, his gimmick, and his gimmick is bad. And luckily, he's just kind of on the outs. It's like they keep pushing him out. Yep. Is it something to do with Star Wars? Maybe. I don't know.
It's his legacy. He killed Star Trek. He's killed Star Wars. He's tainted Batman. He's a plague of everything he touches. Someone made a comment on one of my clips from a conversation I had with Robert and Burnett about how the fact that Tom Cruise technically does not like to work with J.J. Abrams anymore. And even though JJ and his Bad Robot Company have a production stake inside Mission Impossible, that's not as a result of them liking each other. That's a result of JJ does this with everything he does. He tries to get his fingers into the IP so that he always gets a piece of it. When Mission Impossible 2 did poorly and nobody wanted to do a third one, JJ used his clout as a TV producer to get in a directing gig, and he went to Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise because he knew he could not only do a very solid film, but he could get a piece of that production for any future sequels. And that's what happens because, again, if JJ and Tom Cruise are really buddy, it would be him directing the
instead of Chris McQuarrie.
Instead of Chris McQuarrie. But Chris McQuarrie had to get himself out of screenwriter jail after Valkyrie didn't perform well. But and you know, he and a couple of other things, but he worked hard and he pitched and he kept on writing, and then he managed to get something, and it made it work with Cruise.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've had this great partnership together. And yes,
where his stuff's been fantastic.
And Chris McQuarrie has had some like decent relationship stuff with JJ because, you know, JJ kind of helped him a little bit, but it didn't really move the needle at that point. So right now, just like with the fact that Star Trek, the feature films, they'll be produced by Bad Robot if they try to do another live action one up until they decide not to do it. And Secret Hideout now has a piece of Star Trek to a degree that they're their own license to it. So they're always going to be involved with Star Trek as well. This is the tactics that JJ has done and that other producers have been trying to copy. And the studio system has been saying, no, screw you. You do not get a piece of the IP we bought just because you produced one of the productions. So go to hell. And I think that's why when Warner Brothers, when JJ produced this thing, he does not have any ownership or any connections to Batman in any future iterations, even though one of his acolytes, Matt Reeves, is doing the Batman stuff with the Batman and the Penguin. And
right.
Maybe not a Batman 2 because it's now been delayed. Instead of it being late 2024, which it was originally, and then moved to late 2025, it's late 2026. So 3 times you move back a movie is really a bad sign in Hollywood.
I could live without it. That's for sure. I think the aesthetic was pretty solid. I actually didn't mind Pattinson in the suit, but the writing for the character himself, specifically Bruce, like when he's out of the suit, was way too far off for me. And I was like, yeah, you lost me. I'm sorry. Like, I don't need my Bruce Wayne to look like what's his butt from Green Day, and be equally as much of a pussy. So I'm good.
And he talked shit to Alfred. That
was the thing that pissed me off the most too. I was like, I was this close to walking out of the theater. I was like, you don't do that. Bruce would not do that. Especially not in the way that he did it.
Especially if he thought Alfred lied to him, he wouldn't go into Batman mode to find out. He'd be like, why? Just tell me why. Give me the reason. I know who you are. You've raised me. If you can tell me why, I can understand.
And that pissed me off too because
he'll just get up and walk away. Like he won't he won't do any other crap. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it ticked me off even more because I actually liked the casting for Alfred too. I liked Andy Serkis as Alfred. I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. Kind of a waste though, because he would have made a better Penguin. Or
he probably could have been a fantastic Penguin.
Richard Kind, I heard that.
Yeah, because Richard Kind they made Colin Farrell look like Richard Kind.
Mm-hmm.
You could get Richard Kind, who's a great actor, who's got a nice penguin-y voice, and you save yourself 4 to 8 hours on makeup.
I've yet to have a live action Batman in my lifetime that I didn't like, even if I didn't like the movie. So I loved Andy Serkis, or live action Alfred. Loved Andy Serkis.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really care for the Batman. Loved Jeremy Irons. Everybody here knows how I feel about the Snyderverse. Love Michael Caine. Love Batman Begins. Dark Knight's a really solid film. I don't want to talk about Dark Knight Rises. And Batman 89 as well. I can't for the life of me remember the name of the actor that played Alfred in thank you. And then in Forever and Batman and Robin, I don't remember his name. That was Michael Goff,
and then Alan Napier played him on the Dozier series, the 60s
That's
series.
Right. Yeah.
What did you think, Script, when they talked about Dozier Street and all that really on the nose shit? I kind of rolled my eyes like, oh.
Yeah, wow. I rolled my eyes at that stuff too. But that's kind of been a gimmick since I think the 80s. They started naming streets after Batman contributors.
Mm-hmm.
In any regard, like after actors, after writers, artists, all that stuff. I think there's like I think there's a Conroy road now in Gotham City.
See, that kind of stuff doesn't actually bother me as long as it feels earned. So if it's somebody, it's like, hey, maybe this person has passed on, they're not around anymore, and they actually did have a massive positive impact on the property. Let's immortalize that even further here. And I'm all about the on the nose stuff when it comes to comics. I love that kind of stuff. So to me, it's a combination of that while also like honoring if that's the intent, and I'm gonna try and assume the best that that's the intent, that they're trying to honor this person who had this massive contribution and then passed. So that doesn't bother me.
I'm just glad they're using other names than Frank Miller, because there's been oversaturation of his name used in a lot of animated things recently.
Look, I can't think of much of anything that Frank Miller has contributed to Batman Mythos that I actually like.
Yeah. Give me some Archie Goodwin references. Come on.
Yeah. Like, the only reason why this book sits on my shelf is because of Jim Lee. It's not because of Frank Miller. You know, look, and I don't even like Dark Knight Returns.
I do. I think it's a good-looking book. I think it's an interesting book from a technical standpoint, and it's an interesting book because it's impactful.
I like it because it's a commentary of the 80s, and nobody got it. Like, even us as kids, we just didn't pick up on it, and sadly, DC editorial didn't get it either. And then that was the rule. That was like the new rubric for doing Batman. It's like, well, this is where he's going to be, so we're just going to play around with these gimmicks and do stuff with him in that way. It's like, ugh. Okay.
Yeah, but can't you argue it reinvigorated the character for an entire generation?
It did, but it did so at the expense of the character. Like, that's the problem, right? Like, that's the trade-off. It's like, is Batman really as recognized? I mean, I constantly tell people, like, go back to the comics between 68 and 1980. Those are some of the best Batman stories. A lot of them you'll recognize from Batman the Animated Series, because those ones stood out. They figured out how to nail the character Bruce Wayne Batman, the dynamic, all the villains that they got to play around with. They brought back the Joker, who had been missing for like a decade in the series as well. They had fun with the Riddler. They turned Catwoman into a 3-dimensional character miraculously. They made Catman fun as an antagonist and villain again. They did more with Robin. They started the Teen Titans during that era, which is a great series of books. So there's a lot to be said about the Bronze Age.
Yeah,
sure. Bronze Age was my introduction into comic books. So
I got a sweet spot for the Bronze Age. I can get down with Silver Age through, I guess Bronze is still Marvel, or the 90s, right? Or does Bronze end in the 80s?
Bronze ends in the 80s, then you have the new era.
Okay, I can get into like comics until 1995.
Yeah. And I will say this, Marvel had a better run, I think, in the late 70s across the 80s, and then kind of dropped the ball in the 90s. And then DC kind of was like all over the place in the 80s, because some titles were really good. I liked the Man of Steel run.
So do I.
That John Byrne did. I thought that was fun.
Yeah. One of my first 2 comic books ever.
Yeah. I like some
Man of Steel
like,
Zero.
There was more incorporation of the Charlton characters in DC at that period. So I liked how they did with Blue Beetle and the Question going on in that era. Worked out. Batman was kind of hit and miss, but sometimes he had some really good stories. Legend of the Dark Knight was probably the peak, but that was like 90s stuff. 80s was okay because you had the sensational stuff. You had the Death in the Family. That was their big gimmick comic book of Batman in the 1980s. That's where they killed Jason Todd Robin. Can't think of anything significant on Superman's side of things at that point in the 80s. Green Lantern was pretty good. Wally West taking over as the Flash with Mike Barron starting that run. That was strong. And but I would say like Fantastic Four was kind of interesting in the 80s. She-Hulk was amazing.
John Byrne, yeah.
Yep. She-Hulk was amazing in the 80s.
I personally like Spider-Man in the 80s. I like Roger Stern as a writer.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because Spider-Man 80s is where him and Mary Jane finally got kind of committed, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Or by the end of the decade, they're married, yeah.
Yeah, so they're actually pretty much, dating in a relationship, then they're engaged, and then by the 90s, they're married, and then it's now talking about the kid. Like, they're going to have a kid, they're going to have a baby until Doc Ock gets involved and screws that up, or maybe the Green Goblin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Aunt May on her deathbed every couple of issues.
Yeah, they should have had the nerve to kill her in issue 400 and keep her dead.
No, they should have kept her. They should have killed her in One More Day, and it was One More Day was because it was one more day with Aunt May, not one more day with Mary Jane.
I mean,
that's asking a lot from Joe Quesada.
Well, I know Joe Quesada's freaking retarded.
Yep,
he's the worst person to contribute to Spider-Man.
While also having incredible, I'll even say spectacular Spider-Man art.
Oh, his art's great.
He should have had zero control story-wise.
That is a dark period for the character, man. But
one could argue he's been in a dark period for most of the time since.
I didn't hate Brand New Day. It introduced the world of Spider-Man that is featured in that video game everybody likes for the PS4. If people like that game, they like that era of Spider-Man because that's 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Daily Feast, Martin Lee, all the new characters come.
Martin Lee's a good villain.
Yeah, I like Mr. Negative.
Yeah, he's a good villain. He's solid.
And Spider-Man fought a lot of mob characters. What's his face? Bob Gale from Back to the Future fame. He wrote those issues. There was a lot of fun dialogue. You had great artwork from Mike McCone and a couple other guys. They while I don't like what went down with One More Day, they did they're bringing the heavy guns for Brand New Day. And they do deliver some decent Spider-Man. I mean, some of the jackpot stuff was a little annoying. It wasn't perfect, but it does keep going too. I mean, they keep the momentum going when they bring in newer artists again. They have J. Jonah Jameson become the mayor. He ends up marrying his dad marries Aunt May.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of shit that goes down with the book, and it stays interesting up until I'd say the Spider-Verse. It falls apart multiple times. Don't get me wrong. It's not good until Spider-Verse. That's when I personally was like, I don't know how much more I can take of this.
Yeah.
That's when
it's not like it's all trash up until there. There is some stuff that's like, all right, that's solid, that's crap, get rid of it. That's garbage, get rid of it. It's kind of it's much like comics for as long as they've been around. You've got some stories that really land. You've got some choices that really don't. I still see no reason why a lot of the stuff that did actually end up working well since Brand New Day couldn't have still been done, albeit tweaked a little bit, if they had changed One More Day to, all right, Aunt May's gone. Obviously, J. Jonah Jameson's dad couldn't marry Aunt May if she's dead. That's fine. So that would then also ultimately alter the relationship between, actually, if anything, that would just kind of maintain the status quo of Peter and J. Jonah Jameson's relationship and Spider-Man and Jameson's relationship, because he's not going to reveal his identity to him. He's got no reason to. There's no familial, bond there to even attempt to make. But yeah, no, that there was some worthwhile stuff in between Brand New Day and Spider-Verse. I'm not hot on. And then obviously the worldwide crap that came afterwards just didn't
thank you
for me. It did give me one of my two favorite Spider-Man suits, but that's about it. I love the Spider Armor Mark IV.
I apologize to our friend Mariner because we have had this on screen for far too long. Mariner, thank you for your patience. Harley makes me upset, and not because of the swap itself, but because of the communism and Orientalism were things that were in vogue at the time. It's world building they actively avoid.
Well,
what do you say about this script?
Because it's not actually set in 1940s. It's just the aesthetic. That the time is ambiguous. The concept of communism and Orientalism at that time would have been fun to explore, but they chose not to because that wasn't really what they were trying to do. This was more like Batman stories with this visual. That's it. No, we're not doing it in the 1940s. You want to know why? Well, we've got Renee Montoya, who had never been in a dense city like Gotham as a police detective. You've got Jim Gordon, a black man in this case, who would also, in a dense city like Gotham, would not be in that position of power. Maybe in a rural area, yeah, something like that, but not there. They're just basically playing around with the aesthetics don't.
And that's
take
not dissimilar to what they did with the Batman animated series back in the 90s. That aesthetic, it was meant to be ambiguous.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a hybrid of a little bit of modern day, a little bit of throwback. All the televisions are in black and white, but you've got supercomputers and advanced robots and stuff. Like, that's what they're doing. And this one here, they're just refining it a lot more to 1940s with just pre-computer internet age. That's what they're looking at here. And so, yeah, don't take that as the literal time frame of it, because that's clearly not what they're doing here. The stories don't support that.
Well, is it clear? Because a lot of people have been saying this, though. And isn't it, if a lot of people seem to be confused, isn't that a failure on the show's part?
Because one part failure on the show's part for not conveying it clear enough, and then a bigger failure on the general education system, public, private, and charter, for not teaching people how to understand nuance. Because again, you have a big contradiction. Oh, we're doing a 1940s style. Well, why is there black people there? We said it's a 1940s style, not 1940s. Style is the key word there that we want you to of the subject here. Style.
Yeah, there is a difference. There's a difference. Yeah. You're taking inspiration English. Visually.
Yes.
But it's not actually a period piece.
Yes, we're not. And here's the other part too. Gotham City, fictional character, fictional city, fictional universe. They could have a completely fictional timeline with regards to social issues and race relations and stuff of that nature, because it's their world to play to do that. One of the worst things you can try and do when you're creating fiction is try to make it so identical to the real world that you end up not making a fun, interesting new world for people to explore in.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the things that has hurt the Batman franchise live action, is they're like, well, we have to make it look as grounded and real as possible. It's like, no, you don't. Not at all. Like, I was talking with Robert Meyer Burnett the other day, and we were going over X-Men, the original X-Men movie. Lauren Shuler Donner, Richard Donner's wife, Richard Donner did Superman, the movie. She wanted the yellow spandex costumes for the X-Men team. She thought that fans would appreciate it and that we can make it work in live action, because we knew that there's a verisimilitude that could be maintained with that. Bryan Singer and his they said, no, leather suits are more practical, more realistic. It's like, no, it's not about making it. It's not about changing the property to fit our reality. It's about making that reality as convincing as possible so that we accept it. And those are two different things. If you don't understand that, get out of Hollywood. Get out of creating anything, because that's not what it is. You want to play in the real world, go do stuff in the real world. If you want to tell a great story, make that world as real as possible, based on the characters, and how it works and its rules. Don't try and just copy and paste what we do in reality and apply it to your fiction. It doesn't work that way. That's why Woke Factor looks so awesome, because it's clearly not the real world. It's got enough in there that we're like, we believe that this world is real.
Oh yeah, I crafted that. I took a lot of time. I meticulously did that. The one thing, how did I want to phrase it? Because I kind of did I lose my point? Oh, I think I lost my point. Shit. Hold on a sec.
I hate when that happens.
I know, right? No, all I was gonna say is, like, I think here it is. I got it. When you talk about the real world, I think what people actually want is, when you do 1940s inspired stuff, is you want stuff that reflects the entertainment made in the 1940s that would be modern day, and those sensibilities. I don't think that people necessarily want a one-to-one, to that. But I do think when you change like, people have certain expectations. When you think 1950 sitcom, you think of like a certain type of Leave It to Beaver style family, or if you think of something
the
from
Beaver, Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, yeah. But that's in the Western world.
Well, I mean, we're talking, for this is all Western entertainment we're discussing.
Exactly, yes.
But there are those expectations, and I don't think it's necessarily the audience's fault to have those expectations when those type of visuals are a shorthand for an entire decade. Kind of like with the 80s in music, you have a couple songs that kind of represent even an entire decade, even though there's thousands of songs that really make it a
start hearing
thing.
A synthesizer.
Yep. Yeah, it's like you hear Axel F, you're like, oh shit, it's the 1980s. Like, there's nothing more 80s than that.
Hair metal.
Yeah. Give me some Scorpions.
But I think expectations go hand in hand with some of that stuff. And some expectations I do think are overblown, but I do think there are certain ones where people could become confused. And I think that's the case with this show. I do think there are people always hyper focused on the culture war stuff. And I think there are people that are always going to intentionally enjoy something because it pokes that bear. But I do think that this show has a couple things that really pointed in the direction of trying to be something that it really just feels like a, it really just feels like a show, like a 40s thing. I get where you're coming from about how it's not really set in the 40s. It's supposed to just look like the 40s. I get that 100%. But they go the extra mile to make it feel like noir, which is really its peak is the 1940s in terms. Well, that's 40s.
Well, it's from the 30s to the 50s, and then they kind of abandoned it in the 60s.
And we love that kind of stuff, but it takes you back to that kind of era. And so I know that when I see anachronistic looking things in my art, that usually just kind of pulls me out of it. I think that's what my real critique was. Not that those elements of the show made it bad. Other elements of the show made it bad, which we've definitely discussed here. I don't even say it's a bad show. That's the thing for me. It's just, it could have been awesome. It could have been truly great. And it's like, in some elements it is. But overall, it's so underwhelming in many ways. And that's the problem with so much of this entertainment we get, geek culture related at least. So much is underwhelming.
Yeah. I'm curious to know how much this show actually costs to make, because the animation, if there's anything to praise about this show, it's the animation quality. It's super fluid, and being creative manager over the Rippaverse and having eyes on things when it comes to, the animated shorts and trailers and stuff that we've been putting out, and we want to do more, like looking at that and knowing just how much it costs to put out something that's even only a few minutes long, right? If you want to put out something that's of quality, right? Something that you can't necessarily see all the different frame jumps in between the movements of characters, where it's something very fluid.
Yeah,
right?
like you're doing 12 or 14 frames, which is usually kind of standard. So here's the funny part. So whether it's an artist that's a background or a character artist, the average rate is between 29 and 40 cents a frame. And that's not the complete frame. That's just, we're doing, say, for instance, we have the background asset, we have Batman, we have Alfred, and then we have the foreground asset. Now, the foreground asset is a single thing lowered in, so that's probably like $1. The background asset will also be $1, and then 30 seconds for each character in the frame, forever how long that scene is. That's what you're going to have total. So that's 4 people working on one shot for however long. And that seems cheap on the surface, but it adds up as you go up.
It adds up so fast.
Minutes, and it adds up really fast, because you're not necessarily just getting one artist doing 2 characters in one frame and you're paying them 30 cents a frame. No, you're getting 2 artists working together, each of them getting paid 30 cents a frame to do that type of thing. And that's only on your bare minimum. There's other artists out there that charge way more per frame. And sometimes they do it digitally. Sometimes they do the hand stuff. There's a guy named Robert Pratt who has a YouTube channel. He does hand animation on paper, photographs. It does everything. He has a short film called Carman. He's actually done a couple of Superman cartoons on there. They're really good. It takes him months to do, and his rates are probably 5 or 6 times that of what the normal animator would be, because he does it traditional, like old school style, and it's really good, and he knows how to do it. And those artists are few and far between, but they're worth every cent.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you pitch yourself on the value rather than focusing on the dollar, that's actually a business tactic. You pitch yourself as, you want to pay me whatever my rate is. Don't worry about the number, because this is the value and the quality that I'm bringing to the table here. And then obviously that's going to scale commensurate, at least for intelligent people, with the level of difficulty of the animated project as well, because not all animations are created equal. Some have more detail than others. Here in the West, we have it really varies. If you look at something like what DC was doing with the Tomorrowverse stuff, which I could not stand, that Archer-esque that style. There's an actual term for it, and I always forget it, but I hate it, and that's probably why I always forget it. But compare that to something like the animation for Caped Crusader, or the animation, even going back to the freaking old DC animated universe, the animation quality there, or even in the freaking New 52 DC animated universe era, which they were adapting stories that were meh, or they were adapting stories that came out in the 80s and 90s, but using New 52 iterations of the characters, which made 0 sense whatsoever. But that's what they were going for. And even then, the animation quality was smooth. It was fluid. It looked good. But yeah, the more detailed the animation, the more expensive it's going to be. It's going to take more time. That's going to up the rate.
Well, you got to look at the audience that what these things are intended for too. I don't want to sound like I don't respect the art because, I mean, that's me saying this. But some of these things you need to produce differently because they're for a direct-to-video market. They're not going to really. This show is sold on being Bruce Timm.
Yeah.
I think they're going to like to get this guy back. He's got to have the creative freedom to do these types of things, and I'm glad we have that. I don't look as animation's always going to be around, but so much of it is aided by computers. Like even in this show, all the cars are models.
Oh yeah, those are 3D models for sure.
Yeah, it's a little obvious, kind of like in Family Guy. They don't really integrate well, but it's still fine. Western cartoons, I get the appeal of anime from the story standpoint, but some of the technical stuff in a lot of these shows isn't as groundbreaking as I think it would be based on its popularity. I watch it and I'm like, this show doesn't look any better than, some of these direct-to-video shows. This show doesn't look any more interesting than blah, this. And I always think part of the appeal of anime is that it's foreign. Like still to this day, it's like, oh, it's it's from somewhere else.
It might be part of it.
I still
a lot of it could just do with the storytelling. You got snappy, spunky protagonists, and that's something that's been largely missing in Western entertainment. It seems like the protagonist always either has to be an anti-hero that you want to get behind or you don't want to get behind, or some character that's just completely unlikable that's being shoved down our throats for one reason or another. But anime, especially if you look into like the shonen genre, you're looking at characters where 9 out of 10 times the main protagonist, whether they're your favorite character or your least favorite character in the series, always has some level of spunk to them. And that's going to be, at least at some level, endearing. Because it's hard to at least not root for, at times, characters that have some spunk, right? That's fun. There's an energy to it. If you got an upbeat character that's got some spunk, it's hard to not at least root for him a little bit. At least for me. Maybe y'all feel different. I like characters with spunk. I like characters with snap to them. I like characters that are fun. Not every character has to be that way, but I like that there is at least one.
As long as they're not annoying, because that's what I find in anime a lot of times. It's like, man,
well, that's how you get the main character of Naruto. He's annoying. I don't like him.
That's also a hallmark in anime and even in their live action in the Pacific region as well. Like you will get performances from actors that are them literally mimicking cartoons. Like if they're on their knees and begging and crying, it's like, okay, yeah, you're hamming that up way too much, man. Like that's why I have problems with a lot of cinema on the Pacific Rim. And it's like the actors are not disciplined. They're chewing the scenery, and that's part of their culture. And that can work in cartoons to some degree, and that can work for some audiences out there. It doesn't work for me, especially when you have like a very serious tone film, and then all of a sudden someone is weeping and crying out of nowhere. And I'm like,
that might also be a cultural thing.
Like, no, it is a cultural thing, but it's like, it's just that doesn't translate well over. Just like,
no, absolutely. You're 100%
like,
correct.
You try to play like Mel Gibson's Payback movie in Japan, and they would like it for what it is, but if they tried to remake it for themselves, Mel Gibson's character would be far more all over the place emotionally, because they do that. They go way too far on the dramatic side of things. And you, I would hope, at least as a normal person watching those two performances side by side, I hope you would laugh at the Asian one because it is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Because it betrays the tone. And that's one of the things I have a problem with some Eastern storytelling in some regards, is that some of them betray the tone because they're very passive stories in most cases that I've seen, especially on the anime side. It's like, we're going to follow this guy just walking around. Well, what does he want? Nothing. He's just walking around. Oh, now he stumbles onto this thing and this whole crazy village is under attack or something. He doesn't have to help, but he decides to. Why? Well, he has nothing else to do. I'm like, I'm not really interested in that, in the whole, not really the apathetic hero is kind of the thing. I don't have to, but I will. And then all of a sudden he gets super emotionally invested, and we're like, well, where did this come from? Well, he's just doing it because the story requires to. Oh, so now you're more into plot-driven nature. We're not learning character. We're just seeing him reacting to stuff that doesn't actually define who he really is or who she really is. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is like lazy writing, and I'm not winning it over. It's not winning me over. Whereas like you have some other stuff, like some of the Gundam stuff, some of the Ghost in the Shell stuff. No, there's some motivation there. I want to live. I want war to stop. I think I'm better a human being than all of you people. That's why I should rule. Like, those are really interesting character choices and arcs to follow. Don't get to see stuff like that in other animes and in other mangas as much. And if you do, please, you can more than welcome to point me in the direction of them. But more often than not, I always find the flaws in the whole making it up second by second aspect of it. That bothers me. But it's not the same as like Lone Wolf and Cub. Love that
Same
thing
here.
because his family's killed. He makes a choice with his kid makes a choice. He's like, okay, great, we're on the run. That's a motivation. That's all I ask for. Just that.
Clear motivation.
I actually like breaking down anime a little bit because I think a lot of times what happens is people use it as there's a lot of good examples of stuff they like, but they use it all and they say all of it's better than all of our entertainment is today. And I'm not saying there's all these hidden gems. What?
The ratio is the same.
Yeah, a lot of it just comes down to like, okay, so because it's completely different methods of storytelling. So let's take Western storytelling and just take it back to like, when we had good 90s animation consistently, back in or good Western animation. Let's go back to the 90s, right? Let's go back to when even Disney was putting out quality stuff, even though it was just rewrites of classic fairy tales, and let's look at the Marvel and the DC stuff back in the 90s. Even some, like you mentioned earlier, some of the Warner Brothers stuff that was going on in the 90s, man.
All of it was
I
good.
watched the hell out of Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain and all of that stuff growing up as a kid. I loved that stuff. To this day, if I see an incredibly attractive, whether in a movie, in a live action, or maybe it's, an illustration or whatever, "Hello Nurse" is a phrase that leaves my mouth because I watched the crap out of Animaniacs as a kid. And that was something they said all the time. But you compare that to quality animes, and it's not like Eastern storytelling is just better than Western storytelling. It's just that in the West, there's been a drop in just general quality. There's a complete, very, very stark difference that you can draw that line between Eastern and Western style storytelling, where in anime, at least in certain genres, they've just been more or less a little more consistent with the quality and sticking the landing for their audience that enjoys that style of storytelling than we have in the last couple of decades here in the West with our styles of storytelling. And I think there's been this gravitation of people in Western nations towards the Eastern style largely because of the drop in quality over here with our styles. So they're gravitating over there, and it seems like it's this new thing, this better thing. They're not doing anything they haven't been doing for the last several decades.
The funny part to me is a lot of the anime, like not earlier anime, but a lot of anime from different eras, it's just like reinterpreting Western culture. It's like, oh, these are just like their versions of our characters, and it's cool. It's like, oh, this is a Japanese version of Mad Max, or oh, this is a Japanese version of Rambo. It's like, all right, Japanese version of James Bond. Awesome, let's watch it.
So on the Western side of things, the quality has declined because they're not actually using the Western values and the Western methods of storytelling.
Yeah.
On the Eastern side of things, it's highly industrialized, which means that everybody there doesn't have time to incorporate any type of other ideas. It's like, we need a new manga to come out this month. You're going to go in your studio, and you're not going to leave for 72 hours until you do all 32 pages that are going to be out. And then once you're done those 32 pages, you're going to take 5 hours of sleep and eat and go to the washroom. And then you're going to go back for another 72 hours and do another book and follow that up. And you don't have time to think about your story or develop anything really of substance over the thought process that we do in the West here. You're just pumping it out. Because that One Piece guy, what's the legend that he says? He's only really sleeps like 2 hours a night every day, and he's still pumping out pages and pages of it. And then just recently he announced, maybe I should actually figure out what the One Piece actually is after 25 freaking years.
No, he doesn't even know.
Which is horrible. Because that means he's never going to stick the landing.
I didn't even know that's how that went down.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. He called it One Piece. We don't even know what the One Piece is.
You know what the easiest thing the One Piece could be? Your crew. Your crew is your One Piece. The greatest treasure ever is your crew. That's it. And you know what? A good writer
You
figures
just
that out
gave him the answer. You just gave him the answer.
A good
by the
writer
way.
would figure that out the day they
That's what I would have gone with.
Good writer would have figured that out the day they started. But you know what? That's the weirdest thing and I know this from some Japanese colleagues of mine. They're like, yeah, basically they just say, here's the concept. And they're like, well, how's it end? We don't know yet. Just make it up as you go along. And I'm like, that's horrible. And that's why you have some weird convoluted stuff in manga and anime. And then take a look at Dragon Ball. Like the guy only had the one story. And then they're like, well, it's making money. Keep doing it. He's like, aliens? Frieza? Namek?
It definitely is noticeable after a certain point. I know it's sacrilegious to critique Dragon Ball Z, but it's like I personally feel like they run out of shit to do after Cell. Cell even feels like a stretch based on
androids. That's new. Time travel. It's like throw anything at the wall just to see what sticks. Oh, alternate universe. Let's turn Gohan into a superhero. It's lacking structure and it's lacking cohesion and it's just, whatever you can just to make pages to make it a product. And that's where you kind of lose some of the substance to it. Like My Hero Academia, that started off really strong. And then now people are like saying it's not really going anywhere. And you're like, okay, well, some of the diehard fans are thinking, yeah, it is going anywhere. And they're inferring a whole lot from it. But, the rest of the audience is like, nah, it's kind of pulling off. Whatever.
I never understood the appeal of it. I mean, like I said, I have an open mind for all this, and I don't want the audience to think I'm anti-anime or anti-manga.
I'm not anti-it either. I just like the stuff that stands out very well, where you're like, oh, someone actually thought about this.
I like the slightly weird, mundane, day-to-day stuff because I find it really fascinating that there's a market for a comic book about like cooking or harvesting mushrooms. It's not that I want to read these because I want to. I want stories like that. It's just, it's a curiosity to me that there's a market out there for different, because here in America, it's like you have 5 stories. There's the superhero story. There's the post-apocalyptic story. There's the futuristic story. There's the warrior story. And there's the alternate history, steampunk, some weird combination art style. It's like, all right, pick anything from Marvel and it's one of those on the spectrum. But, there's different stuff around the world. I like that stuff. I don't necessarily want to read French comic books or Italian comic books, but I find that it's interesting to read a foreign comic book's take on American culture because they distill us down to the stereotypes and the things that they know. And in many ways, it comes off as like, sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's mean-spirited, but sometimes it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes it's so accurate to a point where you're like, oh, I kind of like this version of it. So
it's a pretty self-reflective thing, which I actually always appreciated here and there, especially when they do it right. Like, especially when you find like some Japanese Western stories that take place in like, California or Texas. And you're like, what is this? And then you follow it through. It's like, this is what they think the Wild West was like. And the language that we used and whatnot. It's like, okay, it's something. All right. Same thing with like the French you were mentioning earlier. They do cowboy comics. And
Mobius.
Yeah, and those are like amazing stories. And I haven't even finished my collection of that. I've been trying to find the physicals of all that stuff and getting the ones that are translated into English because I know French. I just hate reading it.
I don't. I just would look for probably. I'm gonna see if I can find it digitally one of these days. I like Mobius. Well, I love Mobius's artwork. Mm-hmm. He's one of my top 10 guys. I gotta really make that list one day, folks. I'd like to hear your top 10 artists one of these days too, you guys, because I think it'd be a lot of fun to compare and contrast.
I think we might have to do just a dedicated Cape shit stream where we talk about anything and everything comic book related, and we can talk about our top 10 favorite comic book artists there as well.
I think we should do an art stream with an actual like comic book artist. That's not me. Like, I get it, I can do it, but I mean like somebody that's like a legend in the industry. Like, oh man, wait, why is my camera off? Shit, I didn't realize my camera was off. Sorry. I'm sitting there like, why is it just my face?
Boomer.
I know. No, I'm not anywhere near a boomer. I've had to do so much tech shit at this place. It is what
I'll say this. You have never looked or sound clearer. Ever. Yeah. In the how far away, how removed are we from 2017 now?
7
How
years.
many years that is? There
7.
There you go. I'm paid to write and read, not count. So that many years.
You have to count pages, but all right.
Okay, and panels. That's okay, fine. Stop it.
Yeah. Don't forget your page numbers. Those are useful.
Our books don't have those yet.
I know. What the hell?
Look,
I'm just kidding with you.
Look, my own dad was like, I love the books. The art's great. I'm enjoying the stories. Why don't you have page numbers? And I'm like,
I don't have page numbers in Wokebusters. It's just not. Most comic books don't. They did it.
They don't.
Point.
Yeah.
They got rid of that within the last like 30 years, really.
Yeah. I understand from the perspective of the people who wish there were page numbers in the books, especially for the thicker books. Because like Jeff, you got 100+ page book. Our books over the Rippaverse are 100+ page books. Like when you're dealing with that rather than just like a 23-page floppy plus 4 pages of ads, yeah, it's a little more tricky. Like,
well, yeah, if you want to talk about it, it's like, hey, wasn't that awesome? Wasn't that bit awesome on page 15? Where?
Exactly.
On,
page 15, panel, etc. Like nobody
of the full story or page 15 of the full book. Which
right?
One
like
because you got the intro, you got the letters, you got the
exactly. And people that don't have access to the script, the raw script, like I do, aren't gonna know what the hell those things are.
No. We talk about this stuff. I mean, I personally do. I assume everybody that listens knows. I'm like, oh shit, I hope I'm not too esoteric on this or too, industry verbiage laden, because I just assume it's like basic the way I talk about these things. But yeah, I don't ever worry about it. Page numbers, like Stealing Solo 2 won't have them because Stealing Solo 1 didn't. Maybe if I'm going to do an older style book, like down the road, when I get a couple of these things established and put aside some stuff for some more business growth, I do want to experiment with formats. Maybe I'll do a cool, different sized format book with page numbers and, maybe a hardback edition or something. Story dependent. Because I'm going different, folks. You're going to be surprised with everything I put out. Aurora Uplinks says, the Harley Quinn show, please watch or talk about it.
Oh, okay. So the Harley Quinn show is basically, what if we took the Venture Brothers style comedy and put it into the DC universe?
What did you think of it?
Potentially okay. Animation is not bad, but it's really off kilter. It's nuts. It's kooky. It's not meant to be a serious show.
It's the worst version of Harley Quinn in terms of what I like to compare. Like DC has decided to take Harley Quinn and turn her into just a more insufferable female Deadpool for their universe. And that's what, from what I've gathered, that's what the Harley Quinn show is basically written like, where she's just the LOL, so random, fourth wall breaking type of character that is just like this absolute stupidity. Let's just do the most ridiculous things possible. And that's not who Harley Quinn was. Harley Quinn was insane. She was driven insane because of her obsession with the Joker, and she followed him, but she wasn't an imbecile. She was actually brilliant.
See, and that's the thing that
a show like that just writes her like,
well, it writes her well, except the fact that they don't break the fourth wall in the Harley Quinn show. They just make her crazy, crazy eccentric, all these jokes, lots of references.
That's not Harleen.
No, of course not. But it's not supposed to be. That's the other part too. They're not trying to sell it as an authentic show. They're trying to sell it as a gimmick because every character they're making fun of. The only thing that's great about the Harley Quinn show is Bane, because it makes fun of Tom Hardy's performance of Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. He's like, my name is Bane. Like that's how he is. And it's actually like, it's the only interesting part of the show. It's a big mockery of DC under Kevin Tsujihara and Zack Snyder and all that stuff, because all the ideas that Zack would do, Harley Quinn does in them and in ridiculous form. Like they even go into the tropes of how everybody's obsessed with Dick Grayson's butt because it's so perfect or something of that nature and whatnot. And they play around with that. And it's like, okay, I get it. You're making fun of Detective Comics and the legacy and the fandom around, not making fun of the fans, but the fandom jokes that are out there. You're incorporating that in there. They also make fun of woke politics as well. They have Dr. Psycho call Wonder Woman a see you next Tuesday, and that gets him canceled, and that does more damage to him than ever being thrown in jail by Wonder Woman. I mean, that's the joke that they're making fun of there. They make fun of the Hawkman and Hawkgirl romance a lot. They make fun of Bruce Wayne's obsessive nature and that he's a bad dad. They make fun of Talia al Ghul as a bad mom with Damian. Harley is just kind of going all over the place. They really are leaning into her lesbianism stuff, which is a bit like really cringe. They have a sidekick for Poison Ivy that's actually kind of funny. He's Venus Flytrap with an attitude. Clayface is making fun of actors all the time, like getting so committed into the role that he's losing his identity or falling in love with a portion of himself that split off and became sentient, and then they can't touch again because they'll remerge, and when they do, it's tragic. Like there's all these gimmicks that would work in a general comedy show that makes fun of itself, the way like the Venture Brothers makes fun of Super Science and Johnny Quest and those types of Hanna-Barbera cartoons, but it does this with a little bit of reverence. Harley Quinn oscillates between reverence and this is ridiculous. And that's where you get all these tone stuff. Like James Gunn actually does a guest appearance in this, and they make fun of
oh gosh,
Billy Bob Thornton. Like Billy Bob Thornton plays Thomas Wayne in a James Gunn movie about the murder of the Waynes. And what ends up happening is like Billy Bob Thornton gets accidentally killed by Clayface, so Clayface transforms into Billy Bob Thornton to play the role.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, like the thing is, comedy-wise on concepts, this works, but the other part too is like, can you divorce yourself from this not being a serious DC show to have fun with the fact that they're making fun of not only just regular tropes of the industry and superheroes, but making fun of the characters within DC as well. Like it's really hard. Like it's more of a fascinating watch than it is a cringeworthy or upsetting one, because none of the characters are likable. They fail constantly. Any of the social justice stuff they do always bites them in the ass, which makes you feel like, again, like I said earlier with the Harley Quinn stuff and her doing the woke methodology with these rich, people. It's like, it's kind of telling you it's wrong, but at the same time, it's leaning into the stuff to kind of fool the wokies into thinking that it's on their side, but it's not.
Right.
And it's really weird. I will say this, Kaylee Cuoco is not a great Harley Quinn voice. She's just screaming into the mic all the time.
Oh, I didn't realize that's who was voicing her.
Neither did I.
Yeah, it's her from Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
She's also
a show that like set geekdom back
forever.
3 decades.
They also do this joke where she joins the Bat family, and she's trying to be a superhero, but she's screwing up everything because she thinks she knows what it is they do, but it's not what they do. And then she makes fun of the fact that, they don't use guns and that they train all the time, but all their gear and stuff is supplied by Wayne Enterprises. But when Bruce Wayne leaves and Talia takes over the estate and she basically fires the Bat team and takes all their gear, now they have to like be detectives without it. And they're terrible because they relied so much on their gear. So they're making fun of the writing of comics at the time where it's all computer science and not actually investigation. So, I mean, there's complex aspects to it that you're like, oh, this could be really good. But at the same time, it's like, again, is it reverence or just mockery? And you don't always get a good sense of what it's trying to do.
The mockery bit is annoying, and I can't get behind it. I feel like there are really only 2 good slots where Harley Quinn fits in, and that's either she's with the Joker, she is on his side, they're a duo, they're like they were basically back in Batman the Animated Series and some of the comics in the decades that followed. Or if you are going to try and reform Harley, I think the only real way to do it is to actually stick her directly under Bruce's wing. And she's kind of like as though he's trying to reform, because there have been stories where he's tried to like rein in Jason Todd after he's been Red Hood, right? It's like, hey man, like you can still be a force for good. Please stop shooting people between the eyes type of a thing, right? Where I feel like there is a story to be told, and a solid one, where you could reform Harley, but she's still kind of got that edge to her, that bit of unpredictability, where you could have her genuinely be trying after she's broken away from the Joker. And I think that if you want to, and this is, you have to leave the premise with being that there is some still PTSD and turmoil and mental instability within Bruce there. That has to be the premise that we're working with disagree with the premise. That's fine.
Yeah.
You and I disagree on Batman all the time, Script. So
Yeah,
that's why I wanted. That's why I wanted to. I don't think he's insane either.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah,
to the pitch.
I don't think he's necessarily insane either. But yeah, I just wanted to delineate between the two because I know that you and I definitely disagree often on Batman. That's fine. I enjoy it. I actually genuinely appreciate the back and forth when we have these different and opposing ideas on these characters. It's fun. It's fun because I know that we both enjoy this stuff, and that's what being a geek is all about.
I'm getting your pitch. I mean, the thing is, you're pitching a show that's taking a serious approach to the character when Warner Brothers said we want a comedy show with Harley Quinn.
Sure,
and that's like those are completely different things. The other part they actually take Joker and they present the premise of what happens if Joker did get married and was a dad of 2 kids. What would he do to protect those kids in a Joker way? And they play with that. And sometimes it's good. Like he's plotting to kill people on the PTA of his kids' school's PTA. And I mean, they're leaning into it. It's trying to be comedy, but some parts are like, okay, I can see the joke there, but it doesn't land. And then they do stuff where Joker runs for mayor. So they play up the whole Joker becoming mayor. And then he finds out, oh, the city's squandering the budget on this. Well, we'll just slash that. And then he finds out, wait, now I have to fight with the federal government now? Great. I hate, they play around with all these little tropes and stuff of sitcom style for the Joker. And then they try to say, okay, we're going to do it with the Joker. And because they're using F-bombs and graphic violence in it, they're just pushing it as far as they can possibly go.
Well, it's shock value humor and shock value entertainment. And I've always, I've had a number of, screenwriting and acting and directing instructors who have said this to me, and I always believed it as well myself. Other people can disagree, but that if you're relying on shock value, it's that you can't actually just make something land organically.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I've held that, and it wasn't until I was taking acting classes and screenwriting classes and things like that where I heard it kind of articulated in a way that made it make sense to me. It was something that I always, like, when shock value was being presented in front of me, I was just like, like you're trying way too hard to be like cringy, dark, funny here, and it's not landing for me. And then it was articulated to me from somebody who knew what the hell they were talking about, as opposed to dumb kid Andrew, and which not much has changed. Let's be clear. Now I'm just dumb
when he became dumb man Andrew.
I'm just dumb adult Andrew now. Like there's really not much that's changed from that, other than. Yeah, it's just,
I mean, like the other part too is like when you're dealing with shock jokes or shock value, you have to set it up, and you have to find some interesting ways to set it up. Now, for the most part, the Harley Quinn show does try to set up the shock value and have that payoff. They understand the Chekhov's gun. One of the gags they have here, they have a Valentine's Day episode where Bane is smitten with this dominatrix, and he doesn't know if she likes him or not. So he goes to Faust to get a love potion, and he drinks it, but then he looks on the label, don't combine with any HGH, which that's all Bane is, because Venom is a human growth hormone and all that stuff. And what ends up happening is he ends up turning into like a 60-foot Bane, and he's terrified. He's like completely horny and stuff, and he starts banging buildings as a joke. And,
why not?
And just he's basically Godzilla in Gotham City, and it's up to Harley and Ivy to try and stop him. And then at the end, the dominatrix finds him because he's like, and he's like, oh, so you do like me? He's like, yeah, I like you. And he's like, well, are you worried that my muscles are too big and my genitals are not because they're shrunk through all the growth hormones that I use? And she's just like, no, we can make that work. And it's like, oh, okay, that's what they're doing here. Like they're making fun of the fact that Bane is a juicer, and that what comes with being a juicer, well, you shrink to testes, small genitals, all that type of stuff. And it's like, okay, so you've got your setup, you got your payoff, you got your gimmick, you have your shock value in there, but you made it, you made it work within there, even though it just feels kind of like, yeah, you're trying too hard. Because again, it's all just, it's like morbid curiosity. It's like, oh, I'm watching a car wreck, but instead of it being something that's cringeworthy on the Disney Plus side, it's not necessarily cringeworthy, but it's just like, really, this is where you're going with that type of thing. And yeah, it's just crazy eccentric. It's literally like, oh, if you were to take Harley Quinn, put her under an R-rated movie and just have her talk to you about a story of what adventures she would have. This is probably what she would say, but we know it's her going through an episode as opposed to what the base of Harley Quinn, or she's doing this to mess with you as the observer, so that you're thrown off your game because she's either priming you up to be killed by the Joker, surprisingly, or she's going to do it herself. And so it's all over the place and it's weird. And yeah, like it's trying to, I mean, the other part too, and I guess this is the weird thing that's going on at Warner Brothers is, although it didn't work for Velma, it seems to be working in other areas where they'll take a woke idea and they'll be like, we're going to bring in this woke idea, but we're going to make it from the bad guy's perspective. Because this guy like David Zaslav, he doesn't like that type of stuff. So it seems to be that's what they're doing. Like, yeah, you want your diversity, equity, inclusion? Here it is. Here's our villains now. We're going to make Flash a black guy. Diversity and equity. You like that? Like the fact that we made the black guy bad? Making him a crop? There you go. Same thing with the Asian. She's a manipulator and she's promoting communist values by having the rich give all their wealth to the poor at gunpoint because they're greedy. Yeah. You like that? There you go. That's how we're going to do it for you. There's your ideology. There's your stuff in there, but we're putting into the bad guys to let you know what the morals are for this company. So, that's something to consider. I mean, do I think they nail it every time? No. I think we don't have enough writers that have that pedigree that are working in that area of the industry. They're working on their television shows that are not, heavy IP dependent. They're working on their normal dramas or their sitcoms and stuff, and they don't care about that type of stuff. But if you want to work in Batman animation, over at DC Studios, or you want to work at Marvel, well, they got their own mandates on there that they want to do. And if you can just do the job at the bare minimum for under budget, they're fine. And if you try to push back, well, they'll just find someone else.
Sure.
Our friend Xavier DeGod says, rate these from least to greatest. Blade, 98, X-Men, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Hulk, Punisher, Fantastic Four, and Ghost Rider. Well,
from least to greatest?
Ghost Rider is the least, followed by
probably the Hulk.
Yeah. Then Fantastic Four.
Yep.
Then Daredevil. Then
Punisher.
I'm torn. I want to put X-Men. I like Punisher.
Well, the thing is, like, it's a John Travolta Punisher. It's not Warzone Punisher. Punisher Warzone is better.
I like
the other Punisher better than Punisher Warzone.
Because the Punisher makes John Travolta's Howard Saint kill his own family. Like the Punisher, it feels like a very, I know this isn't good for a brand, but it feels like the Punisher got revenge fully and completely, and it's over. It's like if there's going to be just
one and done,
story.
Here was the thing.
That was cool.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you on that, Jeff, because here's one of the reasons why. Because Punisher Warzone I had fun with, but I liked that in just the 2004 Punisher film, it was his actions that were what were really brutal, less than actually seeing how brutal they were. Whereas in Warzone, I mean, he's just literally caving dudes' faces in with his fist, right? Like, and that was, I watched that when I'm like a late teen, and I'm like, oh, this is badass. But I think I appreciate Punisher 2004 a little more in terms of just like, it wasn't overt brutality in terms of his physicality, but it was in terms of his actions and his decision making. And just as you said, he got John Travolta to kill his own family and friends, and then he got his final revenge. And to me, that was like, holy crap, he went scorched earth and he got his enemy to do it for him. Like that was sick to me. Like that was cool. Like, even if I know probably most people that like Punisher as a character probably like Warzone more. That's fine. I will not claim to be the world's biggest Punisher fan. Just looking at it as a Punisher normie for the most part, between the two movies, I enjoyed 2004 more.
Yeah, the way I look at it is the Punisher Warzone is a Punisher Max comic book. And the Punisher
that's a great way to put that.
Just like your basic Mike Zeck 1980s Punisher.
That's a really appropriate way to put that. Actually,
you're proud. You could get out of it if you're honest. Like the Punisher can read your vitals. Essentially, he's kind of like Daredevil. It's like, yeah, I know when you're going to tell the truth, and you know, he had microchip. Well, he had microchip in the other one too. Let's see, TLJ Scrooge. And then I gotta finish for Xavier to God. Sorry, I would do X-Men Punisher. No, I'd do X-Men Blade Punisher Spider-Man. Yeah, that's how I'd end it.
My top 3 would for sure be Spider-Man 2, Blade, probably X-Men, but gosh, that first Punisher movie is like not far behind. I really enjoy that movie, and I get this is such a common theme for me when it comes to films. My dad likes that movie, and I like watching that movie with my dad, and so that probably adds another layer of enjoyment.
We had interesting movies back then. They weren't, 100% faithful adaptations, but some of them were still solid movies.
Mm-hmm. Or at least just like, I hate using fun as an excuse, but I had a good time watching that movie, especially having a good time watching that movie with my dad. Consistently, like we would, while I was still living at home, we would regularly rewatch that several times a year.
I would watch it quite a bit, actually. I had the director's cut. It was superior.
Yes. And I will say this about the Daredevil film. The director's cut of that is more tolerable.
I agree. It's
far more tolerable. Yeah, not menially more tolerable like the director's cut of Batman versus Superman, because that's like this much more tolerable, like a microfraction.
Yeah.
Whereas like Daredevil, it actually makes a fairly discernible difference. It doesn't make it an amazing film, but it makes it like, okay, that wasn't as bad.
I think my favorite from that era, some of them still hold up to watch. Blade still holds up. Spider-Man still
Blade
holds up.
Blade was badass, dude. I freaking love Blade.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say we'll never get another Blade like Wesley's. I think Deadpool's kind of like, yep, that's it. I'm the only Blade.
Dude, Marshall Ali, and
I don't think that's happening.
Guy who's 12 years younger than Wesley Snipes playing Blade. Yeah, that's
it's a joke at this point. That movie is that. Come on, that movie's not coming out.
No. It's not coming
that
out.
Movie's not happening.
Well, and you know what's crazy is that there's a way you could do a Blade movie where you have that plays into the events of Endgame and Infinity War and Endgame, and that is, half the population vanishes, half the vampire population vanishes, and the leader of the vampire cults was part of that vanishing, and so no one has taken his place. His successor. Now that he's back, it's like now we've got a war of two houses, and Blade's got to stop it because it's bleeding into the human world. There's your plot right there. That's how you get Blade in there fighting vampires. He's like, he's got to stop this war between the other vampires that has come as a result of them blipping out for 5 years and then coming back. There you go. That's how you do it. Because up until that point, Blade's been doing a great job, and the vampires been doing a great job keeping out of sight and as urban myths. But now with this power imbalance, crap has hit the fan. People are starting to realize that there's real vampires coming out here, and now Blade's got to start, putting stakes to hearts.
I wish we had more Blade movies, more good Blade movies,
more good Blade. Yeah, so I would be down with that. I also want, even though, okay, so it's a horrible adaptation, absolutely horrible adaptation, but I really, really like the Keanu Reeves Constantine film.
Oh, the Keanu Reeves one?
I freaking love that movie. I want more. We're never gonna get more, and it's a bad adaptation. Like I know he's said in interviews, like he's been trying to get a sequel made, and just it hasn't happened. I know it's a bad adaptation, but it's a good film. I really like that movie. I think they did a lot of really great things with it. It's a lot of fun, and I think it was the right, at least. So even if the character wasn't 1-to-1, I think the script was right in terms of for what Keanu's range is for acting.
I will say the pilot, the NBC pilot to Constantine with Matt Ryan is probably one of the best things ever, and then they completely abandoned what they were doing from the second episode on, which is why it was canceled.
I never saw the series. I never wanted to
just watch the pilot. The pilot is fantastic.
Okay.
But yeah, then they completely.
I know he looked far more like Constantine. He looked like he was ripped right off of the page.
Oh yeah, not only that, Matt Ryan did the research too. Like he talked to all the writers of the characters. He read everything that he could to get into character, and then
I appreciate that kind of
figure
work.
out what interpretation they were going to go with, and that's what they did. The pilot's got like Walking Dead level effects and creepiness to it, which fits in with the supernatural and what he's doing, and it's got a little bit of mystery intrigue. And then what happens? Well, they write off one of the characters from the pilot, replace them with someone else, take it in a completely different direction. The show bombs, and what happens? Greg Berlanti snaps up the actor, puts him into one of his shows, and then
you said Greg
really triples down on the gaying up of John Constantine. Like they make him way more gay than he actually is.
See, I appreciate when an actor actively wants to do the homework and understand the assignment. We don't see enough of that.
Actually, a lot of actors want to. It's up to whether or not the production says, don't do it because we're going in a completely different direction.
Right.
So it's a waste of your time.
I should rephrase what I said. You're correct. I should rephrase what I said. We don't see the results of that desire often enough, because I know even for something like freaking, and I don't give two shits about who the hell did John Cena play in Suicide Squad? Peacemaker, yeah. Another character I don't really give a crap about. But he actually was going to read the comics and do the research, and James Gunn told him not to.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to go a different direction, and he didn't want the actor to have predispositions and leanings towards how this character should actually be, and yada, yada, yada. And I am well aware that that is commonplace in Hollywood with a lot of these bigger studios when it comes to adapting existing properties, existing IPs, where the producers, the directors and whatnot will tell the actors, no, you're just going to look at the script that I give you. Yeah, and that's annoying.
Which is kind of ironic, because when Brie Larson was cast as Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, she was told to read the Miss Marvel comics and then the Captain Marvel comics afterwards. And I know for a fact she did, because I've seen the videos and photos, and even her at parties with some of those magazines in her purse that she would be reading when she'd be going off into the corner. And it's like, wow. And why is it when you saw the actual script, you didn't raise questions as to, this isn't the character I was researching?
See,
and part of that has to do with the fact that she's a professional, so she doesn't want to stir the pot. And the other part is the fact that you're stuck. You're just stuck.
Now, let's check in, because we got some people who've been sending in messages. Thank you, guys. TLJ Screwjob, maybe Harley, and this is like Pat Morita said on a TV show, I haven't been Asian since December 41.
Oh, God.
Damn.
R.I.P. Pat Morita. Mariner1712, thank you very much for your generous super chat again. I understand the ambiguity. My point was that they actively lose world building by not taking advantage of the era they're cribbing from. It's literally uncreative.
Well, the thing is, it's world building is a byproduct of your character and story, not the other way around. So there are only 10 episodes. If they wanted to, they have opportunity to do that. Again, we're not going to see it because this isn't going to get more than 2 seasons. But the thing is, like, they only have to take one aspect of the era that you're cribbing from. For this case, it's the aesthetic. That's it. That's all they cared about. They just wanted the look. They don't care about the social political times. They don't care about. They don't even care about the language, because a lot of the language is very contemporary. Like, it's not 1940s slang or lexicon in this show at all.
No.
So all they cared about was the style, the visual style. And if that's all they cared about, they fulfilled that part. And if you wanted more, that's a you issue, which is fine, because I don't disagree that when you're presented with that look, you're expecting a more reflective tone and reflective style of that. But that's not what they did. And that they did not make any allusions to try and convince you otherwise. That's the other part too. When you look at the advertising, which is slim, it wasn't like they're saying we're leaning into the 1940s and how the 1940s were really authentic to Batman for the 1940s. They didn't say any of that stuff. They just said, we like the style and we're going to be telling these stories with this style. And if you want to see a 1940s Batman, there's a couple of serials out there that definitely play definitely take advantage of the era, like him and the Wizard and him going against the Japanese. If you wanted to see it, they're there.
Wait, there's a Japanese Batman? Is that where that?
No, there's a Batman. There's a Batman villain that is Japanese.
Oh, from the cereal. Oh, duh, that makes sense.
So,
thank you, Mariner1712. I appreciate the channel support. TLJ Screwjob says, script, why blue shirt, black undershirt on Avatar?
Oh, this is a medical smock from Star Trek, the original series. So, yeah, this is what McCoy would wear when he was examining Kirk or Spock or Nurse Chapel or any other character, or Uhura when she got her mind erased, by the probe.
Thank you, TLJ Screwjob. Michael Scambody, what's up? Haven't heard from you in a while. Punisher Warzone was awesome, especially Jigsaw. Netflix Punisher sucked, boring. Plus, Warzone trailer had Ramala's Song Days of Revenge. Badass song. I remember Jigsaw's transformation being particularly brutal. They put him in that glass grinder. Ugh.
That's interesting because most of the people that I've spoken to really enjoyed at least that first season of The Punisher on Netflix.
I liked it.
Not as much as they did like the first couple of seasons of Daredevil, but as I understand, like the Punisher series was fairly well received.
Dude, I loved all that stuff back in the day. I really didn't fall off the Marvel train. And I mean, the channel had been around, so it was a much different show. I'm not negative on Marvel because I hate Marvel. It's not been what it used to be. But back then, I was always into that.
I kind of got discouraged by the poor landing for Luke Cage season 2 and the poor beginning for Jessica Jones season 2. I was like, I can't follow what they're doing.
Yeah, I couldn't get behind the Jessica Jones series. Like I was trying because I kind of not love, but kind of semi like the actress, and I was like, okay, I'm willing to be convinced. But it was just not doing it for me.
Catherine Ritter, she plays it kind of one note. It's David Tennant that makes that work because of what he does as the Purple Man. And that's what sells it. But it's and then of course Mike Coulter as Luke Cage, who I thought was great casting, and that first season was pretty strong. And then again with the second season, it's like, oh, they're Anakin Skywalkering him or something. But yeah, like I Punisher season 1, it was kind of mixed for me because it didn't feel like it was the same character that we saw in season 2 of Daredevil. There's something off, in my opinion, on that, and I haven't really been able to pin it down because I only saw the first season once. I never went back to it.
Neither did I.
Whereas like with Daredevil, it's like those first 3 seasons, yeah, those are easy to get back into. They're quite engaging, especially season 2 with the way they did the cliffhangers for the first 4 episodes. Like, geez, they're really going hard there.
And back then, that was in continuity with the MCU.
Yeah. I mean, it's technically now in continuity again because apparently Daredevil Born Again is an official 4th season of the original Daredevil series.
Oh, it is?
Yep, because they've reshot it. They've rewritten and reshot it since the actor's strike.
Oh, okay, because that was not what it was initially pitched to be as and marketed as, if I remember correctly. Like they had made it in not uncertain terms that it was going to be a completely new thing, but they were just using some of the same actors, as I understood.
Well, yeah, they're basically saying like this is the MCU Daredevil, and it's going to have similarities to the first 3 seasons, but it's going to be its own thing. That's what they originally did it for. During the actor strike, I guess Feige and co over at Marvel saw the dailies of what was going to be released because they had time to kill. And they saw how terrible it was. They're like, it's just better to throw this out and start from scratch again. And that's what they essentially did. And they brought back Augie Nelson. And they brought back, what's her name?
Deborah Ann Woll.
Deborah Ann Woll, yep. And we're going to see what they're doing. But it's been delayed. And they split up the 16 episodes into 2. Part 1 is 8 episodes and part 2 is 8 episodes. So they're part 2ing them.
This is a genuine question for you, Script. Is Marvel and Feige actually pivoting?
Seems that way. Seems like they started making those decisions late last year.
Because and that's not meant to be an ironic or a
No.
sarcastic or anything question. That's a genuine question, because I'm looking at the numbers that Deadpool and Wolverine is doing right now, and I'm like, okay, so nostalgia is only going to get you so far, but it is on track to hit $1 billion. What that actually winds up looking at, on net at the end is a different matter. But okay, so clearly there's audience interest. There's still the matter of like Disney really needs to rein in their spending on things, but the movie is tracking well. It's performing very well with audiences right now. So you're not going to hit $1 billion just based off of making us longtime comic book fans happy alone. There aren't enough of us to do that. You have to reinvigorate audience interest in that general audience. That movies, just by their nature, are a normie medium in terms of consumption. They're obviously, cost of things has gone up, but it's an easier thing to go to a film once every however many months, right? And spend X amount of dollars, as long as you're not also getting popcorn and a Coke, then you're not spending $300, than say buying several comics every single week, every week of the year. And this movie it's doing genuinely well right now. So it's clearly gaining back some general audience interest. And that was the one thing one of the few things that was in question with this film. It's like, okay, so we know that there's been this apathy across. You pissed off the longtime fans, and then you pushed us to the point of apathy. But your big mistake after that was to continue to double down to the point where the quality dropped to where you then had apathy with your general audience, the people who weren't worried about the accuracy of the portrayal of the characters, the people who didn't care if a character was race swapped because they didn't know any better. So you lost their interest. You're now gaining them back in at least a bit, right? With this movie.
I don't think that's what it is. They made a bunch of superhero movies based on characters no one likes or gives a shit about, and they
didn't do anything to make you like or give a crap about. Because Guardians of the Galaxy, nobody cared about them, but a lot of people love them now.
Yeah, but that was always
James Gunn's credit. Yeah, he made the Guardians household names, even though they're like the second or third team.
All of these movies always brought, Guardians of the Galaxy made it, and it's like, yeah, that one did, but how many other ones did not? And now you got Deadpool and you got Wolverine, and anytime you have a crossover, and it's not a Zack Snyder movie, it's gonna do well. Look at Freddy versus Jason. That's a huge hit. It may not be cool in this sphere. People may not think of it as a real movie, but it's a crossover film. It changed a lot of stuff for that franchise.
One of the first crossover films there, and the fact that they were desperate to try and get a follow-up to that and just couldn't for some reason is just goes to the miracle of that first one. When it comes to something like Deadpool and Wolverine, that is basically audience anticipation. And it's something that was set up, as I said on this channel a few weeks ago, it was set up at the end of Deadpool 2. Like they basically had Ryan Reynolds said, hey, as Deadpool's like, hey, Wolvie, I want you to come back for the third one, and I want you to say yes because people are going to miss you.
Yeah.
That's what and he delivered on that. So you had 8 years of building up to that. The other part is you also have Bob Chapek, who basically said when he was in charge of Disney for that very brief time, we're making a Deadpool movie 3, go do it. And then it was already too deep into production for Bob Iger to pull the plug from out of it. Kevin Feige didn't want to do it. The other aspect too is that you have the Thunderbolts and Brave New World and Captain America Brave New World, which were developed and put into production long before Deadpool 3 was out there. And so it's going to be part of whatever
those movies are making this much money.
Exactly. It's going to be leftovers of what's going on there. And the reason is that given what Marvel was able to do in the Infinity Saga, there is no reason why they couldn't, with effort, make Shang-Chi a really good movie. The reason is that they just phoned it in. They got Dave Callahan, who is a screenwriter I despise. I don't know what he's like as a person. I think he's fine, but as a screenwriter, he's terrible because he phones it in. He also did Wonder Woman 84. At the behest of Patty Jenkins and co. Because Patty Jenkins didn't write it. She just came up with a story idea. And she said, hey, can you, Dave Callahan, do this open writing assignment? Here's my concept. And he's like, sure. And he banged it out in a weekend. And that's what you got.
Wait, but didn't she get writing credits on that?
Only because she pitched the story. That's how she did it. It's what she negotiated. She doesn't actually know how to write.
But she got, hold on. Hold the freaking phone. Because my brain just broke because I could have sworn back when Wonder Woman 1984 came out that we were that I say we, that's the royal we, that a lot of people in this space were talking about this is what happens when you let, we'll just say, someone like Patty Jenkins like be the main writer on a Wonder Woman film.
Well, that was a lie because she wasn't. We know that. I know that.
I genuinely didn't.
Oh,
like
okay.
this is actually new information. And to my
doing that,
to my defense and my own admonishment, honestly, like I never had looked into it further beyond that because this was however many years ago now, like what, 3 or 4
years ago, yeah, something like that.
So I just remember seeing the film and being genuinely disappointed because despite the weak third act, I really liked the first one. It was the first 4K DVD I bought. And I was like, wow, this movie sucked. Like the writing was bad. The story was not good. What the hell happened? Like the first one averages out to be a solid movie. It's not amazing. It's not all too dissimilar to Captain America First Avenger, except Captain America First Avenger is much better. At least in my opinion.
It is.
But
100%.
I didn't realize that like she had just come up with the concept and hadn't actually been the main writer on the thing.
No, because
from my understanding, she was.
No. Okay, so this is how the credit system kind of works, especially when you're dealing with like a writer director who wants to pass themselves as a screenwriter. So, Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns work together on the story, which is why they have story by Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns, and it's the ampersand and. It's not and. So when you have the and in there, the person that comes after the and is the last person that wrote the script. If there's the ampersand, they wrote it together. So when you take a look at the screenwriting credits and you have a screenwriting by Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns, ampersand, and then Dave Callahan, it basically says that whatever the first two writers wrote wasn't really a script. The guy that was the and afterwards.
The final name, that was the person that actually did the writing.
Yeah, because Jeff Johns and Patty Jenkins do not sit down and actually write a 120 screenplay. What they'll do is they'll write an outline, write some notes, write some things. They'll then negotiate that they get a screenwriting credit, and then they hire someone like Dave Callahan, who's an assignment writer, to come in, take those notes, turn it into a screenplay. He gets his and credit as opposed to the ampersand credit. When I work with my writing partners, we're an ampersand because we're literally on final draft and collaboration mode, writing together at the same time, back and forth, developing the story and doing it all out. And we don't have another writer coming in to rewrite us afterwards. And that's one of the tricks. Whenever you see a writer director in there, and then you see an and another writer afterwards, the guy that's the and, he's the person that came in and actually wrote the script based on the ideas and the conversations and talks that the two others did.
So that's really great and interesting insight and kind of like inside baseball into the industry.
It's industry code. I mean, not general audiences aren't supposed to know that or even understand that. And there's no reason for them to at all. But if you're like looking at like a film franchise and you see a lot of the creative teams are the same and you're like, well, why does this one suck? And then you go a little bit deeper and you see a new name that you don't recognize. It's probably the reason is that new name that you don't recognize is why it sucks. And
I see.
There you go. Like Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns, they worked on the first Wonder Woman, but they didn't have the same screenwriter. In fact, that screenwriter, whose name is escaping me at the moment, was probably too expensive to come back for the sequel. So they went to the cheaper guy that turns in something who did the terrible cartoon movie America, the motion picture that's on Netflix. That is horrible. Which is about the founding fathers, where apparently George Washington and Abraham Lincoln are best friends, even though they're 60 years apart in time.
Don't worry about that. That's irrelevant. Just let the people enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was just a horrible comedy. But regardless, like that's the type of guy. And the thing is, if they got someone like, say, Steve Marcus and Chris McFeely to do Shang-Chi, you probably would have had a slightly more authentic Mandarin. You probably would have more empathetic Shang-Chi. You definitely wouldn't have had Awkwafina in there.
Oh my God.
Why would you need her at all?
Nobody needs her ever.
And you would actually have something where people are like, damn, I would be really excited for that movie. Same thing with Eternals. If you got good writers on that, they could have made Eternals work. I don't think they should have done the whole celestial birthing out of the planet storyline, because that's, crazy and stupid, and they're very.
I don't think general audiences were necessarily ready for Eternals to begin with.
They'll never be ready.
It's not like you couldn't make just on a. So removing the general audience from it, if we just break it down to a technical level, right? Like the things we can apply to really any film, your scripting, your pacing, all of that, cinematography, effects. you could make a really good Eternals film. Would general audiences care about it though?
If you can find the same type of magic that James Gunn used to make people
you
care
would have
about
to find that hook. Yeah, you would have to find your hook.
And that's how you do it. I mean, heck, Black Panther was awesome in Captain America Civil War.
Sure.
And people loved him so much that he literally earned his movie. Like, they knew they were going to do it, but it's like, we've actually physically earned it because you made sure that his introduction and his story is great. The movie itself that he got could have used some refinement, especially in some of the special effects departments. But he earned it, and it's like that's kind of the formula there. You can find a way to earn these moments. I think they should have done that with all of their more riskier characters, like a Shang-Chi, like the Eternals. Have them kind of be in almost cameo or walk-on roles in a supportive factor into a larger story, so that you can actually gauge the audience's reaction. Oh, the way that they handled and introduced Cersei and all these other characters, I'm actually interested in that. I would actually go and see a movie of theirs. Instead, they gave us like a cold version of it. They said, here's the Eternals. Who are they? Well, they're really important. Why? Well, Jack Kirby made them. Okay, I love Jack Kirby, but why? Oh, well, we're doing something with the next phase. Really? What is that? We can't tell you. And they, truthful, they didn't really know. They decided in the last minute to basically turn that Celestial into the source of adamantium for the MCU.
That was something they pulled completely out of their ass. And then on top of that, they had to freaking gender swap Makari. And I'm not going to pretend to be the world's biggest Makari fan, but it seems like no matter what, that's true. I can't even argue against that. It seems like no matter where I go, speedster archetype characters are the most disrespected in the world. Whether in characterization or just general story writing.
Is it wrong that
nobody knows how to do it?
I think it's a lost. Well, I like the A-Train and the Boys, but that's
See, I don't care about the Boys. Just based, I've never read it. I've never watched it. I just know the premise, and I'm not interested.
They made fun of Disney this last season, and they also made fun of Captain America: Brave New World pretty hard with A-Train, actually, that I thought was kind of hysterical. They're like, this is the 7th reshoot and 7th rewrite we've done, so you know it's going to be good, right? Like, he says that at their D23 event. And I'm like, that's pretty on the nose and meta, but it's also a great slight that the fact that Disney does not know what they're doing. And they're basically just saying it. We know you don't know what you're doing. I mean,
I thought this season was not as good as the other 3, but interesting enough to have it be top priority to watch it each time it came out.
Yeah. But again, it's like, the fact of the matter is, Marvel has a ton of characters that almost nobody knows about that they could introduce and do well. Like, you know what's funny? The bangles that Miss Marvel has are the quantum bracers that are used by Quasar, who is kind of like a tongue-in-cheek joke of Clark Kent and Green Lantern mixed.
Yeah.
So you could introduce him to get those bangles and then have Miss Marvel kind of retire because she's a 16-year-old girl and she shouldn't be put in danger. And there's a story in there that you could do really well to make us actually care about that. And actually,
I'm not going to do that because she's part of the Young Avengers.
Well, they've canceled the Young Avengers.
Thank you.
Wait, when did they do that?
By not announcing it at San Diego Comic-Con. They said we're only doing these movies right now. Like, they have a window.
Okay, so open. It was cancellation via omission.
Yes, because again, you're never gonna. Studios don't admit defeat, and they don't do cancellations. The other part too is like they have, I think, an open window movie slot for February 2026. That's going to be another movie, but I think it's not going to be any of the newer MCU characters. I think it's going to be something else to kind of set up Avengers Doomsday in that regard, because that's been the scuttlebutt. That makes sense. You have Fantastic Four. You've got another movie in between them that's not announced technically, but the booking release date is owned by Disney and for the theaters. And then after that, you got Avengers Doomsday followed by Secret Wars, and confirmation that Marcus and McFeely are back for those 2 movies, which means that you're going to get some Captain America Civil War, Winter Soldier level writing in those films. So that's a nice bring. I hope that they still have it for that, because they have been away for 6 years essentially from Marvel, and that's a long time in Hollywood to be away. So you got that pairing back with the Russos. They're
It's hard not to be optimistic in some ways.
It's really hard not to be optimistic, but I would emphasize the cautious aspect of it, because again,
cautious optimism is healthy
I
in
haven't
this
checked
scenario.
out. I haven't checked out the latest thing those two guys have written yet to see what their quality level is like during the interim. So when I do, and if it's good, then I'll be a bit more optimistic. But if I see it and it's bad, I'll be like, maybe they kind of burned themselves out, because, as I've said before, superhero fatigue is not on the audience side. It's on the studio side, because they're the ones pumping these out, trying to hit the market and basically own it. And when you're doing it 3 to 4 movies a year, that really is exhausting. And
we need to get more Spider-Man movies. I don't know. I mean, I know why they don't do it for legal reasons, rights and stuff, but
they've got 3 money. Disney has negotiated 3 more with Sony, so it's just when are they going to release them, and when are they going to do them?
At this point, and I hate multiverses, but at this point, I would be give me more Toby and Andrew. Just give me that. That's whatever.
Sony is going to have a rough year, because they've got Venom and Kraven the Hunter this year.
Okay, so here's the thing. I have zero interest in Kraven the Hunter, or rather Kraven the animal hugger is what he's more or less being pitched as for this film.
Be wearing animal skins and ironically referencing earlier parts of the show.
We just circled all the way back to the first 45 minutes of this show with that. But I have zero hope in that film being even remotely good or interesting. However, Venom Let There Be Carnage was incredibly disappointing for me as somebody who is a major Carnage fan. The trailer for Venom The Last Dance made me feel like, okay, that was kind of fun. I'm going to see it. I hope I'm not as disappointed as I'm going to brace myself to be. That's the best way I can put that. I really want to enjoy that film, because the first Venom film was not an amazing film. It's largely propped up by its middle act, because the first act it's fine. The third act is cookie cutter 2010 superhero film. And then the second act is just an absolute blast. I'm really hoping that this third entry in the trilogy is just more of Act 2 from that first film, because that was a lot of fun and it propped it up for me by quite a bit, enough that it made me rewatch it a few times. I hope it's not horrible. I hope at least it's better than the second one. Me too. Good, if not better than the first. That's my hope, because I would prefer Eddie Brock to be a bit more of the meathead, big Eddie Brock. That's not what I'm getting. But they have done a good job. And even in the second film, though the second film was a much weaker film, there was some legitimately good dialogue between Eddie and the symbiote. And so I'm hoping they lean more into that and have a good time with it, and just give me a good time. I'm not expecting a completely serious film. I'm not expecting to come away from this movie like having existential questions about life and the universe. Just make me walk away from the theater not regretting having spent $20, right? Like, can we do that? That would be a great baseline to work with. I'm hoping that's where we're at.
I can't believe how funny Venom is these days. And I'm okay with it too.
Yeah. Well, but that's really the only other way you can go, because at least for me. So when Venom was a villain, and he hasn't been a true villain in a really long time.
Most of our lives.
Yeah, with the exception of one of the current storylines they're currently doing in the Marvel comics. I can't remember which of the comics, but there's a current one they're doing. It's weird or whatever. But so you either have him be like a villain, even if he's not necessarily a misunderstood villain. But I really like having him as kind of like the anti-hero, and anti-heroes are overdone for the most part these days, but I like Venom specifically as an anti-hero, but lean into this balance between how just genuinely horrifying it would be to encounter someone like Venom in a dark alley or really anywhere, but he is not actually that aggressive or mean of a guy. I feel like there's organic humor to be found if you can write the interactions correctly there. And that's what I'm hoping to find in this third film. I really hope we can get that, because if we can do that, great. But with Spider-Man, No Way Home left Tom Holland's Spider-Man in actually a good place.
Yeah, let's follow it up.
A place where he actually felt like Peter Parker for the first time ever.
Not only that, it's just
lean into that.
We have a Secret Wars coming up, and we have a piece of the Venom symbiote in the main MCU, whatever. Part of me suspects that the first Spider-Man movie that comes out after Secret Wars is going to be part of that Venom story, because we've already got the Secret Wars announcement. And the question I asked, as I posed earlier, is like, well, what movie are they going to do before Doomsday? Spider-Man movie would fit into that point. You could also kind of hint or set up a little bit of Doom in that, because Spider-Man has come and encountered with Doom in some regards, or what have you.
Sure. In fact, Doom is one of the characters that has, or rather, I should reverse this. Peter Parker or Spider-Man is one of the few characters whom Doom actually has quite a bit of respect for. He doesn't like him, but he has a lot of respect for him in the comics. It's a really weird and kind of fun relationship and play off of that they have.
Yeah.
Well, I am always down for more Spider-Man.
And I mean, I think it would be a smart move, because you should establish what's Spider-Man like now that he's a college student and he's kind of on his own and everything. Like, give us a normal Spider-Man, then do your Secret Wars, then give him the Venom suit to deal with in that movie. And then third one is, Venom, Spider-Man and Venom. And then that's your second trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do it quicker. But I mean, don't sacrifice quality, but we can't have like 8 to 10 years between movies. The actor looks so different.
Well, not only, I think it's actually
Tom Holland looks so much older right now than he did in No Way Home.
Yeah, he's kind of
he aged really fast.
Well, he's like 29, I think. But here's the other part too. So it seems like with the way that Disney team on Spider-Man works is that they work better under a crunch than they do with a few years, because I wasn't a big fan of Far From Home, because they had a few years to work on that. But they only had a year to work on No Way Home. And even though it has a big first act problem, acts 2 and 3 are pretty solid. So I think if they give them some crunch time, they might be able to pull off something else, because again, they had no time to wedge in ideology in No Way Home.
See, I found Act 1 was where they mostly lost me for the rest of the film, because their premise was retarded.
It was a very weak premise, yes.
Like it was something that they did for the entire first trilogy of Spider-Man films in the MCU. Like, your premise is one of the most brilliant minds in the Marvel Universe. I don't care if he's a teenager. He does something completely ridiculous and retarded. And so, like, okay,
outside of his normal schools, like, he should know that, because it's part of school and academia. His retardedness of Peter Parker comes from more of like the maturity of adults outside of the school system and how society functions.
Yeah, because and then the second act was just boring for me. It moved so slow, and not in a slow way that it felt like it was actually truly building to something. I know that it was, but it didn't feel like it at the time, because it was just moving so slow. That movie, I was there for the third act. That was the entire reason why I was there. Yes, the keys, the jangling keys of nostalgia. They brought back Toby. They brought back Andrew, the Spider-Man of my high school and college years that I actually give a crap about. And
we were in grade school for the first Spider-Man. You can make us older.
I'm trying, man. Come on.
I was in high school.
Work with me.
Spider-Man.
Work with okay. So no, I was was I a sophomore when Spider-Man 3 came out?
You're a senior.
I was a senior. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we're the same age. So yeah. Either way, like, I was still in high school when Toby was Spider-Man, when Toby was Peter Parker. That third act is what I don't even want to say saved that movie for me. It's what made me come away not feeling like I had wasted my money, because I did not enjoy the first 2 acts of that film at all. Even with Alfred Molina being in Act 2, and he's phenomenal. Like, you're not going to get a bad Alfred Molina performance from me.
No. You're going to get him in a bunch of bad movies like Species, but you'll get a great performance.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah.
I haven't watched that movie in forever. I think I'm about due for a screening. Now,
we know why you're gonna rewatch that.
Because I like 90s cheese?
Yes.
Yep. And you
And
know
I
the best part
support
about Species? That was the movie that made me realize Ben Kingsley does not care. Like he does. He did his Gandhi. He got his accolades from that. He just doesn't care. He's just going to do it anything he wants. I'm like, you know what? Respect, man. If I see Ben Kingsley on the marquee, I know the movie's probably most likely going to be bad. And I was kind of right with Iron Man 3.
Yeah, I don't like that movie.
Not kind of right. No, you were right.
Well, there's aspects to Iron Man 3 that I appreciate, but yeah, overall, it's like this is not there. Like I like the idea of Tony Stark. We're going to do an adventure of Tony Stark without his armor, so he's got to use his ingenuity and build some gear porn to get out of his problem. Cool, that. How do we get him without his armor? Oh, we have this really convoluted thing. Son of a bitch. Oh, and
they didn't lean enough into the PTSD for me. Like I feel like they could have done more with that.
Yeah, I would have preferred a better justification because I don't really for a character like Tony Stark, who passes out in empty space after saving New York and then wakes up back on New York, I don't think he would end up having PTSD as a result of that because he's got, first of all, absent memory, and he wasn't feeling any trauma prior to what was going on. It just didn't feel properly earned based on what happened in Avengers, I would say, because he didn't go through enough crap. Like,
I feel like sometimes it takes time for things to set in.
It can. But like I've been in.
This is based on people that I know.
Yeah. I've been in some dire situations. I've had friends that have been in some pretty dire situations. They did not have PTSD because for whatever reasons they blacked out during the most tragic point and they have no memory of it. So they were kind of fine and surprised by it. And Tony Stark kind of blacked out because it's not like he was trapped and tortured and then thrashed about and witnessed the explosion that irradiated him and scorched his body. It's like he went to one location, he dropped off a bomb, and then he kind of fell back through the portal and was caught and saved by the Hulk.
Yeah.
While he's mostly unconscious. He's kind of missed the point that he could have some trauma going on there because everything leading up to that point, he did not express like he was going through a panic or an issue or anything else. He's like, no, this is kind of par for the course for me at this point because he's experienced way more PTSD in the cave for 3 months than he did during Avengers.
No, he did. He absolutely did in terms of what was presented to us. 1,000%. I 100% agree with that.
So I think that part of it has to do with the fact that if they're going to the PTSD from Iron Man 3, it's predicated on a false premise from Avengers. So I think they just doing that again is kind of weak because Iron Man's PTSD that he dealt with in Iron Man 1. It was like he got obsessed with like destroying his weapons that are in the hands of his enemies. And he got obsessed to the point where he's like risking his company and things are going haywire to the point where his boss and mentor betrays him and tries to kill him. And like, we've done that beat before. We don't need it again for, 2-3 movies later in an Iron Man story. So that was a big problem. And the other part
trilogy's all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, the other part too is like, you have Shane Black, who's a really good writer, who is clearly under the thumb of Disney to like do this. And it's unfortunate because Shane Black helped reinvigorate RDJ's career with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh, yeah.
And RDJ thanked him back by saying, hey, do a Marvel film. And I think Shane was like, I know that you love me, Robert, but Disney hates me, and holy crap, screw it. Because fun dialogue throughout a lot of that movie, but it was missing.
There's some good scenes for sure.
It was missing something. And also I hated the idea that they got rid of at the end of it. They're like, yeah, Tony figured out a way to cure himself and restore his chest and sternum and remove the arc reactor. And I'm like, I kind of like that kept around. They should not have gotten rid of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
They just remove all stakes or any kind of hindrance to these superheroes and they become, I don't want to say they're always fantastical, but they take away the parts that ground them, or at least terrible comparison, but it's like in a video game when you use your superpower, and if you do it too much, it takes your meter down. There's got to be consequences for the overuse to keep a balanced story. I missed that, but oh well. I just make it funny.
Yeah, because that's the one thing that was kind of missing from Iron Man 3 is there wasn't really much problem with his arc reactor in that film.
No, it was an afterthought.
No, yeah, it's because that's one of the coolest gimmicks of Iron Man, and even in some of the comics when they started paying more attention to it, they're like, yeah, he has to have an arc reactor in his chest, he has to have an arc reactor in his suit, and sometimes they can go paired up to give him an extra boost of power. But it comes with that stake where, if he decides to combine his chest arc reactor with his armor arc reactor and use the unibeam, he's draining some of the power that's going to be keeping him alive as a result of that. Like, there's a stake there. And it's like, well, how much does he have? Does he do the math right? Is he going to hold on? Is he going to find another power source that he can charge up and boost to give him that extra 10 minutes so he can safely recover and replace the reactor or with a fresh one? I miss those types of stakes. And I miss those types of explorations of challenges for characters.
I do too.
Heck, you know what I would have done since they're bringing RDJ back? You know what I would have done? Because I mentioned a little bit of this. I would have had Dr. Doom kidnap his body, and the way he saves RDJ is by putting a new arc reactor in his chest, so that even though it looked like he died because of what the Infinity Stones did to him, a new arc reactor saves his life. So it doesn't take away his sacrifice, but allows him to get the arc reactor back in his chest, be alive again, and then of course Dr. Doom transplants his mind into RDJ's body and Tony Stark's mind into Dr. Doom's and imprisons him, and then Man in the Iron Mask story where Tony Stark and Doom's body has to escape and reclaim his body and life to save Pepper, his kid. And sure, Happy, because why not?
I'd watch it. Now, speaking of watching, Xavier God wants to know where we rank these movies I know we've all seen. Superman 78, Batman 89, Blade, X-Men, Spider-Man, The Dark Knight, Iron Man, and Avengers.
Oh.
Well, let's all think for a moment.
Okay, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Blade, Dark Knight, and Avengers. Because Avengers is a very convoluted plot, but it's such a fun thing to get the guys together, but that's just not enough for me. There's more heart in the other films, even with Blade and the story with his mom and finding out what happened to her and everything that went on with that.
Right, but I think Xavier to God is specifically inquiring its overall impact.
Well, Superman has the big impact on all of them because every single movie had to follow that model.
Mm-hmm.
Even Blade followed it.
I would agree with that
to a degree.
I would agree with that.
I know X-Men followed it because Bryan Singer was a huge Superman fan. Spider-Man definitely followed it.
I don't remember Superman diddling kids. What?
Well, that's different. I mean, fan is different than actually doing that. Sam Raimi cropped some similar shots from Superman and used them in Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
But we don't use that anymore. Had a negative impact on film because trying to get more serious DC films as a result afterwards. That was a big mistake.
Let's see. In terms of importance, from most important to least important. Okay. I mean, it's hard to argue Superman.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'd say
I would put Blade over Batman, honestly. I think because we wouldn't have ever gotten the course that we went on for the MCU if we didn't get Blade. Blade really reinvigorated the superhero movie genre.
Actually, Batman did as well because prior to Batman, we had Dolph Lundgren, Punisher, the Captain America, where Ronnie Cox plays the president. We also then had Superman Quest for Peace. So comic book movies were actually in a very long decline. Batman reinvigorated it. And then right as it was kind of on the downbeat, that's when Blade came into the picture. Because it was 97 was Batman and Robin, and then 98 was Blade. And Blade kind of, what studio was Blade was New Line.
New Line.
Right? Yeah. So Blade was New Line. Mm-hmm. That lit a fire under Fox to get X-Men because X-Men was supposed to come out in 1999, but it got delayed. And I remember that because I was an extra in 98 on that. So I was a kid there.
Cool.
And all of the children on that set where I was told that we were not allowed to be near the director. We had no idea why. We just thought he was just a pretentious jerk. But no, now as they get older, like, oh, maybe there's something more to that.
Wow. Okay. They just out and said it.
Yeah. And unfortunately I did not meet Kevin Feige, or if I did, I had no idea what he looked like then. Because met a lot of 80s other actors and stuff like that.
He probably had more hair then.
I was about to say that.
Maybe. Like the way that I think of Kevin Feige is, okay, a dude with a hat. And I'm like, I don't recall a guy. Everybody had
He's
hats
wearing
on.
that hat to hide something, I feel.
Everybody has hats on. So it's like and even the younger pictures I've seen of him, I'm like, he doesn't look familiar. I don't think I ever saw him.
I know I would put X-Men at the bottom of the importance.
Well, see, X-Men basically has an impact because it brought Hugh Jackman into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Spider-Man did a lot too. This is kind of hard.
It is, yeah.
This is one of the more tricky ones because you could make a strong argument for just about every single one of these in terms of impact. So, okay. So Dark Knight had a strong impact in terms of how they moved forward with Batman in live action. But in terms of superhero movies as a whole, I don't know if I would necessarily put it super high on the list.
Yeah, me neither. Because
I might put Dark Knight far lower on this list, honestly. Iron Man, I want to put really high on this list because Iron Man, it was because Iron Man worked that we got the MCU at all.
Yep.
They made let's at least just the premise just being phase 1, right? Maybe even phase 2. But that only happened because they made Iron Man work. Otherwise B-list character.
Yeah.
At that time. So that cross section of comic book character history, Iron Man was B-lister. And they start, and to their credit, so was Cap really at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So they kicked off the entire MCU with secondary characters and tertiary characters.
It was more exciting back then because it wasn't like Spider-Man had its own brand. The Fantastic Four and the X-Men were their own thing and had a certain feel, but these ones felt, and I don't want to sound stupid when I say it like this, but these ones felt a little more believable. They were a little more, I don't know, like the first phase of it wasn't like, they're like, oh, this could happen in our world. It's just like more technologically advanced. And the Hulk was grounded. It was, I like that they brought in the monster, but the Ang Lee one was so weird and just bizarre.
He was taking cinematography, the comic book panel side, and applying it to cinematography literally, because I guess Ang Lee just doesn't understand how Westerners watch movies, which is why he's so successful in his own region, with a few exceptions that are actually beautiful films, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a beautiful film.
Right.
But he also did Brokeback Mountain, if I'm not mistaken. And
yeah, he did.
I don't know what the heck was going on with that at all.
Never seen it.
The only thing you missed is Anne
happy to
Hathaway's
say
boob.
I have not.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Script?
The only thing you missed from that movie is Anne Hathaway's boobs.
I feel like I could live without those.
They're nice boobs.
Yeah, Anne Hathaway was always cute.
She's pretty. Yeah. She's certainly pretty. I don't. Maybe I'd feel weird about seeing the. What was it? What the hell was the Disney movie she was in when I was in my
Princess
late
Bride?
teens?
No,
no, not Princess Bride.
Princess Diaries.
Princess Diaries. That's the one. I knew it was Princess something. Thank you. And Princess Bride's phenomenal movie. Have fun storming the castle. Freaking Billy Crystal.
Princess Diary was a little too much of a girls' movie for me.
I watched it with my family. But it would feel weird because of that to see like the girls out. I don't know. For her specifically. There's probably a few others on that list that would be just kind of strange for me. And maybe that's just a me thing.
I'm gonna have to say yes for now. Xavier to God, thank you. We have another one here from Xavier to God. Rate these based on intelligence. Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Peter Parker, Bruce Banner, Hank McCoy, Hank Pym, Charles Xavier, and Doctor Strange.
Ooh. See, 4 of those characters have very different fields of intelligence.
Yeah. In fact, Charles Xavier wouldn't be nearly as high on this list as some people might think.
No.
Yeah, you just got psychic ability.
Charles Xavier is, he has psychic powers from his mutation. He's not like some super genius. He can just read your mind. I would put him at the bottom of this list. Based on the other characters that are on this list, freaking Reed Richards, Tony Stark, we got Peter Parker, we got Bruce, we got Hank, both of them. I would put Charles at the bottom, followed by Stephen Strange. His expertise, his intelligence is specifically medical, and then magical.
Yeah.
But is in terms of overall IQ, that's never been something that's been truly honed in on that I can recall. I'm welcome and happy to be proven wrong, but I wouldn't put him incredibly high on this list either. I would put him and Charles at the bottom of this list, probably followed by wow. Let's just add all the most genius characters in the Marvel universe and try and rank them.
Is Peter Parker really smarter though than Reed Richards or Tony Stark?
No, he's
not smarter. However, Reed Richards and Tony Stark have listed him amongst their ranks in the books.
I know that, but I'm just saying, like, I love Spider-Man a lot more than your average person should, but I'm like, he's not that level of smart. He's just.
I'll put it to you this way: if Peter Parker was that level of smart, he'd be rich like Reed Richards and Tony Stark and Bruce Banner.
Yeah. But he's not.
But he's not, because he is. It's not that he's not intelligent. He is. He's actually got.
Well, he's socially retarded, is what he is.
Yeah, he doesn't. His intelligence comes from research, knowledge retention, and deduction. It doesn't come from like interpersonal stuff. That's part of the business mindset. Now, Reed Richards, I think Reed, Bruce, and Tony could be interchanged quite on their level of intelligence, because Reed Richards is very intelligent, but his lack of empathy makes him stupid, because he knows how to cure Ben and he knows what to do it, but he doesn't. And that's evil, in my opinion.
That's pretty messed up.
Tony Stark has a little bit of greed to him, but he's also arrogant, so that gives him his flaw.
Well, Tony Stark is kind of a narcissist.
Well, yes. And Bruce Banner is like, he's puny Banner. Like, he's a brilliant man who's made inventions that the government has taken and weaponized against him.
He has no backbone.
But he has no
His
backbone.
Backbone is the Hulk.
Exactly. And like, a smart person would be a bit more defensive and protective of his technology than how he is. So those three, I think, are on par, but they're interchangeable from being like, the best, but they're up there. And then Hank Pym's got a bigger arrogance because he made Ultron. I think Hank McCoy is probably the most normal, but I don't think he's as smart as Reed Richards. That's the thing.
No, he's not.
But like, he's definitely the one that you would want to have in your corner all the time, because he's caring, he's empathetic, he's intelligent, he's wise, he knows how to nurture, he knows how to comfort, and he knows how to be a ferocious defender of who you are. And when someone comes at you, he's probably actually the most honorable character of the bunch.
Even over Spidey?
Well, Spidey's honorable, but again, because he's kind of arrogant and greedy and clumsy in that regard, he's not. Like, I'm just talking about like general in regards to person of character, not the character itself.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, like, what? Peter Parker and Hank McCoy side by side. Hank McCoy would be a great, like, supportive figure to help get Peter back in better standing socially as a person and help him on his way. Like, Hank McCoy would be the best guy to be like, Peter, I think you'd be a great high school teacher, and I'm going to help you get into that. Like, that would be like a Hank. I can see that being Hank McCoy's path to help Peter in that regards. Like, you need a stable job, not just taking pictures of Spider-Man and swinging through the webs. Let's get you you've got talents that are beyond what other people have that I think could really help shape the future generation. You're inspirational that way. Pete, here I am, Hank. I'm already a doctor, a professor. I've taught in schools and universities. I have connections. Let's hook you up. Let's get you into a school to teach younger kids and, really put your skills and wares where they should be. I can see Hank being the type of guy that does that. Tony Stark could be like, hey, you want to work for me in my science division and R&D and all that stuff? Reed Richards would be like, who are you? And Hank Pym would be like, I kind of prefer to work alone. So like, I can see only Hank McCoy being the only one that would actually care to help Spider-Man be more of an adult. Well, he doesn't have to help him be a superhero.
Hank McCoy is a far more empathetic character than a lot of these other guys, because that's one of those dangers with a high IQ, especially if you have a high IQ and you regularly exercise it. There's an inherent danger there with arrogance and narcissism and things of that nature, and lack of empathy, right?
Yep.
And so that's a thing that we see as a hallmark of a lot of these characters. But McCoy does not exhibit those traits. So yes, he would probably be the most apt mentor to be alongside Peter in terms of like, hey, Peter already has the brain, right? He's one of the most brilliant minds in the Marvel Universe. He has been named and listed among them by the other members on said list. However, severely lacking when it comes to application beyond just the bubble in which he locks himself into. That's one of the reasons why I genuinely wanted so much more to come out of the Superior Spider-Man comic series, specifically the first one when Otto was inhabiting the body. Otto's mind was inhabiting the body of Peter because Peter's conscience was still present and he was making commentary and learning, at least in that miniseries, he was learning. It wasn't a miniseries. It went for like 6 volumes, 6 different story arcs. But you know what I mean? It wasn't like a super long run or anything, but he was learning and seeing that there was a far more efficient and effective way to do what he was doing. He was doing, like, there was a way to continue to be a hero and be selfless, but be far more effective in doing so, actually exercising his intelligence, exercising his intellect in a far more effective and efficient way. And he was learning that from that. It went nowhere afterwards when he gained his body back. They just were like, oh, so like all of those lessons and observations that he had over the course of the last year and a half never happened. That's fine. Let's just walk his character back because that's inconvenient. And that was frustrating for me because I wanted to see that growth. And I feel like the other way you could do that is to have somebody like Hank kind of come alongside him. And it's not necessarily that has to be the exact way to do it, but he would be a character that would be a far more effective mentor than somebody like Tony. Tony and Peter are so opposite in terms of their approaches, their personalities, where they come from. I don't see it working. Reed, there is a inherent, it's not like he's a malicious character, but there is something there in his high intellect that makes him either miss or just make the decision to sidestep something that otherwise an empathetic human being would absolutely go for. I know, or at least if I applied myself for a few months, how to fix my friend. I'm going to do that because I know that his condition, it weighs on him, and I love my friend.
Well, one thing you got to take into account with all these characters we discuss, Andrew, they're made to be a never-ending cycle of stories, and if that's your big thing, once your character completes that, there's nowhere to go. So we got to remember with all of these stories, is like
there's nowhere to go if you're a weak writer.
We have to say, but like keeping the drama, I think works. But
sure.
Let's see. Xavier to God wanted to chime in about the Venom trailer because I was confused by the Last Dance trailer. We saw a piece of symbiote that was left in the MCU from No Way Home. I wonder if the idea was scrapped.
I feel like that's one of those things that they're holding off on whether or not they want to decide if it was scrapped or not.
Yeah, because I can see somebody getting their hands on it, and then when they get to Secret Wars, put in like a containment unit there in that facility, and when Spider-Man has to get his costume repaired, he goes to the wrong thing and releases it, and it forms on him, but it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't venomize yet. So everybody's just like, "Oh, you went with a black costume." It's like, "Well, I didn't really have a choice. This just kind of formed on me, huh?" And then maybe later at the end of Secret Wars, someone's like, "Well, where's that weird symbiote thing?"
Yeah,
that I put in here, and then dun dun dun, as they do.
860 saying God says button request. Say his name and he'll appear.
Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry.
Every time. I always clap.
Well, that was something.
that was the thing. That was the button.
TLJ Screwjob, thank you. Resaw Disney or Deadpool and Wolverine. There were only like 10 people in the theater, and I got to say the car campfire talk scenes were great. Like Hugh Jackman isn't acting, he is Wolverine, but fight scenes really lost the oomph. What do you guys have to say about this?
The fight scenes are actually like the most boring parts of the movie.
I haven't seen it yet, so I can't comment.
Dude, you're late to the party, Broham.
I know. Dude, I'm not gonna. We all work hard here, so I'm not gonna like claim that I'm working harder than anyone. But I'm just.
I don't think any of us.
I haven't had the chance to step away to drive literally 5 minutes that way to go see it in IMAX. Let me put it that way.
Well, it'll be worth your time when you watch it.
I want to see it. I keep hearing mostly good things, so I'm encouraged to see it. I haven't had the chance.
Script, anything you'd like to say about the super chat?
No, I think Hugh Jackman acts quite well in this film. It's a beautiful performance. And the fight scenes do lose their oomph because I think they're disposable. They're there for the joke and for the gore, and after that, it's like you don't really care. But no, I think a lot of this is a buddy cop road trip movie of sorts. It's sketchy in format, deliberately so. And yeah, it's really just trying to be a fun, good time and mockery, not just of Fox, but also of Disney and what they've been doing overall. And, it is what it is. It does have some weird issues, like, yeah, like the plot, there's a plot contrivance in there that actually really does, the movie can't hinge on it properly, but they sidestep it as quickly as possible to get on with things. And I remember for a year, everybody saying like Deadpool Wolverine is going to be their way to do the soft reboot. No, it was never going to be that. I knew it wasn't going to be that. It isn't that.
I just wish it was a little like funnier. And I mean, like the humor that was there, I wish it was just better humor. I was kind of,
a lot of it is very dependent on you actually knowing the Fox films and the MCU and the politics between both studios at that
The thing
time.
is, I watched all those movies back in the day. I'm not late to the party on any of that stuff. I just was kind of like, oh, haha. Like my brain recognized where the jokes were. I just had very few like laugh out loud moments. But like I said, I didn't really go and rail on this movie or make a bunch of reviews because I didn't think it was a bad movie at all. I just, first one was the best. TLJ Screwjob, thank you for that. I mean, that movie's going to make a ton of money. We said it would be a huge hit here, so I guess we technically guessed right, but it's really not hard to guess when two popular things cross over. I mean, Godzilla versus King Kong, they've both worked, so. Now, Andrew, I'll answer this in a second after Troubles Away. It says, I'll take a road on Joe Rogan and Uncle Ben for reasons. Superman versus Superbread, Dawn of Dinner.
Stupid.
I go for some dinner. Actually, I did have dinner.
Me too.
So let's see. You want a Joe Rogan button? What's a random Joe Rogan button? All right. Well, how random do you want? Let's give you. Wait, that's not Joe Rogan.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo.
There you go. Just to keep the silence minimum. Here you go. Here's your Joe Rogan button.
Imagine if you gave a white supremacist 5-MeO DMT, and then as the first one, as they're exhaling,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What a rush!
There you go. Also, too, you want an Uncle Ben? No problem.
Who's that Pokemon? It's
Uncle Ben.
It's rude. Every time.
Yeah, it is. Folks, thank you for joining us tonight. Hit that thumbs up button to continue showing the support for the channel. Guys, I think it's time to go. It's almost 1 a.m.
Yeah, I just realized that. It's like, oh man, I got stuff to do tomorrow morning, which is now this morning.
Tomorrow's my office day, which means I get up an hour earlier. So.
And I gotta get to making videos because that's what YouTube's algorithm wants. So, folks,
Do it.
I told you I'm hitting 200K by the end of this year. I am making it happen. I'm not gonna scream to make.
You will make it happen. It will happen.
Yeah, only, what, 3,000 away? Yeah,
not even. So, folks, thank you for watching us. Thank you for making Woke Busters happen. I apologize. I had a mint to keep me awake, but I'm really thankful and grateful, folks. I want to tell you how much I appreciate that. I'm excited to bring it to you. It's a big epic, and I'm currently in like late pre-production for Stealing Solo 2 because I want to show you guys that these things don't take me years to do. I want to show you what I can do with my new skills. So join me here on the channel. I should have a new video for you tomorrow. Join me on Thursday for the show. Friday, I'll be on the Side Scrollers, and Saturday, I will be on Thinking Critical to talk comic books. So Jeff is going to be everywhere starting Friday. It's going to be a lot of
make
fun.
sure to send me the link so I can pull you up because I'll forget because I'm horrible about that sort of thing. But I'll absolutely make sure to pull it up.
I'm looking forward to it, man. I like to stream with new people.
Hell yeah.
860 saying God says, give me one more Joe Hendricks. Oh, yeah, no problem. You got to say his name and he'll appear because Andrew and Script love him now.
Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry.
That is a predator smile.
Such a stupid gimmick.
Well, hey, he got himself over, and now he's one of the most in-demand wrestlers in the world.
That's hilarious.
Just by saying his name.
All they had to do was say his name, and he appears.
Can we just go see that movie, Superman versus Superbread, Dawn of Dinner? I really want to watch that movie.
Superman versus Superbread, Dawn of Dinner.
I'm good with it.
Seems delicious.
I know.
Yeah. Like some French bread or sourdough and then some freaking New
Fresh
England
butter.
clam chowder or like lobster bisque or something. I'm here for it, man.
Speaking my language, New England seafood is better than West Coast seafood.
Bingo.
I'm out there. I'm glad
East
somebody
Coast does seafood the best.
Yeah.
It's the butter.
There's a lot less radiation in it, too.
Yeah. And
That might be part of it.
Well, I mean, no, it's because of a certain nuclear disaster that occurred in Japan about 10 years ago.
Oh, maybe that's why it's finally out of my system and I feel good again living in Ohio. I got it. Jason Green, I do not know when J.J. Abrams will stop screwing things up, but I'll tell you this, I'll stop screwing things up and have the P.O. box ready for you next Tuesday. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. So, folks, what I want to do is I want to create daily content, and I'd like to get, now, look, mileage may vary. I'm not expecting you guys to send us, your firstborn. But if you guys send in stuff to the P.O. box and it's enough to do a weekly series, I will bring back Tales from the P.O. box and do a bunch of cool stuff like that. So all you guys got to do is, all I got to do is open the P.O. box, and then you guys got to send us stuff to the P.O. box. But before we go, Script Doctor, where can we find you on the internet? And tell everyone about your Patreon, please.
Sure. So you can find me at Script Doctor PhD on Twitter X. You can also find me at youtube.com/Script Doctor, where I have a Saturday show called Scripts on Saturdays, where I, with a special guest host, review screenplays that are currently circulating around Hollywood, being entertained for purchase and development. One of the scripts we reviewed recently was actually sold. So you can check that out. And if you want some advanced notice on the scripts we're doing, plus my written reviews and some exclusive videos and interviews, you can find that on my Patreon at patreon.com/thescriptdoctor. It has a 1 week free tier at the base level, which gives you access to pretty much 90% of what I have on there. Only at the higher tiers do you get the Zack Snyder mockery video I did with regard to how the movie Superman 3 explains the fall and a hopeful rise of the Superman character at DC from Zack Snyder to James Gunn. So you can check.
Fingers crossed.
I'm crossing the fingers too. Hearing some good stuff with regards to the previs incorporating into what they shot over the last few weeks. So yeah, and if some of the leaks are true, I think it'll be a very needed Superman story.
I want good Superman. I am so hopeful with this one. Like, hopefully optimistic, but like that.
Yep.
I'm as much as I'm bummed that we'll never get Henry Cavill in a full actual Superman film. I'm open to being convinced, and I would love to have a genuinely hopeful, good Superman film in my lifetime. That would be nice. You know, he's kind of an important character in
It's so weird
the
that
comic book
the
sphere.
way you say that, it's like, yeah, it is our lifetime. We've had nothing but bad Superman films.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Quest for Peace is okay.
Terrible.
It's pretty bad. I mean, Superman Returns is mixed.
Brandon Routh could have actually
He was robbed, just like Henry
Yeah.
Cavill.
he was one of those actors where like it was a good casting, bad script. You know, and that's unfortunately far more common than we deserve as fans.
Mm-hmm.
I still wonder what a full Ben Affleck Batman movie would have looked like. That's the one that I go, that probably would have been
if he was written as proper Bruce and Batman, I fully believe he could have wound up my favorite live action Batman and probably our best one. But Snyder was in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So
there would have been some really cool scenes. I know, like, there are about, okay, so Batman wears many hats for me. And in my head, there's about maybe 4 different versions. And there is one of a high-tech, high-pain Batman. And I was kind of cool with seeing that on screen. I do like a detective. I do like Michael Keaton has an air of mystery to him that other Batmen don't. By the time we get to Val Kilmer, Batman's neon colored, and everyone's like, "Hey, it's Batman!" and all this crap.
He's a celebrity by that time, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't leave home without, leave the cave without his credit card. Like I get that, but I do like the different versions of Batman, and I would like to see, a movie version of that. I also am open enough to see I don't want to say a reinterpretation of Adam West, but I wouldn't mind seeing a movie where Batman makes a joke and steals a scene or something. I'm not saying I need it to be funny, but I'm very open to different Batman ideas on screen. But I also hope we can get the perfect one and balance that. So when we roll around to the James Gunn version, everyone's like, I want that Batman all the time. And we actually get it, because we've had so many of these great things that we get a trilogy only. And that's it. Or we get 2 films, like for Andrew Garfield, for Andrew over here, and there's no finale to that. You got to finish these things out. That's
with a weak second script, right? So it's like a lot of times us fans get kind of robbed with the sequel or threequel. Hyperion's an asshole.
He can play Quasar in the MCU, because that's funny. Because then they dye his hair blonde, and he's got the glasses, the fake glasses. He's got the cosmic bands.
I mean, put a wig on him and do some post on it for the blending, because when you're a man and you're past your 30s, you don't want to be dyeing your hair blonde and stuff if you're a dark-haired male.
Well, he wears a toupee, so all he has to do is just wear a different toupee.
Henry Cavill?
Oh yeah.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, does he really?
Oh yeah, you can tell in a lot of his profile shots in Man of Steel. Like the back of his head, either he's got a dent in his head or he's wearing a hairpiece.
Huh.
And if you take a look at his hairline, it really goes far back. It recedes
really far
with the widow's peak.
I was gonna say he's got some freaking Vegeta hair with that widow's peak.
And one of his brothers is also balding, and baldness is
Hereditary.
It doesn't really skip a generation unless you have different mothers, and that's the thing. Like if your mom's father was bald, you are going to be bald at some point before you hit 40. And guess what? He's 40, and I'm pretty sure he wears a hairpiece.
How about that?
Poor old Henry Cavill.
Still a handsome man.
Still a handsome man, yeah. And you know what?
Still a
the last
handsome
few
man.
films he's done, even though they're a bit smaller, he has been wearing wigs. Like at the end of Argyle, he dresses up as a dork with a Jerry curl like mullet.
I still need to see that movie. The trailer looked fun. I want to see that, and I want to see what was that other one that he was in? The world, was it World War One or World War II?
Oh, the Ungentlemanly Warfare type.
Yeah,
that was good. I saw that.
Yeah, Ungentlemanly Warfare. That one looked fun.
It was.
I wanted to go see it in theaters, and I just never got a chance to.
So with Argyle, you have to go into it knowing that this is actually a mockery of action films and action novels.
That's what I guessed it was when I saw the trailer. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like a lot of people went in there thinking it was supposed to be a serious movie, and I completely understand that because it's dealing with spies and whatnot. But Matthew Vaughn, who did the Kingsman and Kick-Ass, when he's doing his original stuff, and more so original stuff because Kingsman's based off a comic book series, as is Kick-Ass. When he's doing those types of things, he's trying to have fun with it, especially on the satirical stuff. Like the Kingsman comics is a little bit satire, and so is Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass is very satirical and dark approach to superhero stuff. He's having fun with it. When he does X-Men, like X-Men Days First Class, he takes that very seriously.
Yeah.
But when he's doing something like Argyle and the Kingsman, he's having fun with the genre. Like he will do things that don't make sense, but he knows that he's making fun of how other action films do stuff that don't make sense. And and he throws in great music, great cinematography. He incorporates fantasy and all those types of elements in there. And then he has good tongue-in-cheek humor. And Sam Rockwell steals the show in that movie.
The movie looked like a ton of fun. Like the second I saw the trailer, I was like, I really kind of want to go see this.
Yeah. So, and I
do plan to see it.
I know a lot of people that didn't like it, and I get that. It's like, fine, not your taste. But I could see what was going on there. Just because I'm familiar with Vaughn's style a lot. And you know what? If he had a couple more bigger movies, I think audiences would pick up on it quite easily. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, these are some good stuff. Because Matthew Vaughn, he made the movie for $100 million and sold it to Apple for $200. So he's a smart man.
So folks, I think it's time to go. It's getting pretty late here. It is 1 a.m. and we all need to be up early. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. We'll be back next time with more. Join me on Thursday for a new show and keep checking out our new videos. We're getting to 200K. I guarantee it. So until then, folks, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.
You don't believe in the Force, do you?
I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make